Okay, now you all.
I don't know the precise location. Kim tells me.
Good.
You're good.
Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. I'll read the notice. Board of Alder's notice, New Haven Legislation Committee of the Board of Alders will meet in person on Tuesday, June 30th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the Board of Alders chambers located at 165 Church Street, 2nd floor, New Haven, Connecticut, to hear and act on the following items. Number 1, LM-2026-0109, zoning ordinance text amendment approving an amendment to section 42, table 3, use table paragraph V, or 5, of the New Haven zoning ordinance to permit cultural activities not carried on as a gainful business, including art galleries, libraries, and museums, to be designated as of right in the light industrial IL district. Item 2, OR-2026-0007 zoning ordinance map amendment approving a change in the zoning designation of 249 Legion Avenue from BA General Business and BD2 Central Business Medical Districts to entirely BD2 Central Business Medical District, and to include it within the Downtown for All overlay zone. And 3, OR-2026-0013 zoning ordinance text amendment of the New Haven Board of Alders, amending Article 1 definitions and Article 5, Section 42, Table 3, use table of the New Haven zoning ordinance to define juice bars and similar facilities, and to prohibit juice bars and similar facilities within establishments that operate under a cafe permit and that sell and serve alcoholic beverages. I think this mic just went down, right? Per order, Honorable Richard Furlow, Chair, attests Honorable Michael Smart, City Town Clerk. These items are on file and available in the Office of Legislative Services, City Hall, 165 Church Street, 2nd floor, New Haven, Connecticut, 06510. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7641B or 203-946-8582 TTY TDD. Public comment and or testimony may be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavencT.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. This meeting may be viewed on the New Haven Board of Alders YouTube page. Okay. I will ask our committee to introduce themselves, starting with Alder Rodriguez.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Evelyn Rodriguez, Alder in the 4th Ward.
Elias Theodore, Ward 1.
Richard Furlow, Ward 22.
Adam Marchand, Ward 25.
Amy Marks, Ward 26.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for coming this hot summer evening. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, we'll ask if you have any conversations. As you can tell, we are experiencing technical difficulties with our microphones, which is to say that if a fly buzzes through this room, it will be picked up on this microphone. And so we're going to ask if you have any conversations, so please take them out in the hall. And having said that, would you please take your cell phones, put them in your hand, and put them on mute or on off or vibrate, whatever this switch is that will not make any noise. I don't see anyone moving. Please put your cell phones on vibrate, please. And we say this, and it happens every meeting because people say, I'm not going to do it. I don't know why. And then you get embarrassed because the cell phone rings and anybody stops and looks at you. So take this 10 seconds, please, and put your phones on vibrate or off. Thank you. We're going to do this a little bit different, I think. I don't think we need to do the full, well, let's see where we are. Let's see where we are. Maybe we can just do high level, because just to give us a, bring us up to speed. But what I'm going to do is ask for the presenter of the first item to come. And I would like to hear first from City Plan, because we didn't hear the report. So I'd like to hear your report first. And then will hear the presenters or those that are going to present it. So if you would come, give your name and address for the record, and that will be the case for everyone that comes to present or to testify. Please give your name and address for the record. Thank you. Welcome. Great. Thanks for being here this evening.
Thank you. And I'll make sure the mic seems all good. Great. Abdul Razak Zachariah, Deputy Director of Zoning with the City Plan Department. Address is 341 Alden Avenue. Unless I was here to try to figure out where that's at. It's with him. So I'm here as representative of City Plan just to speak on the first item, the text amendment related to arts and cultural activities not for a gainful business within the IL district. The request is to make a text amendment to permit these uses as of right within light industrial districts. In the City Plan Commission meeting, there was a recommendation of denial that came from the City Plan Commission. I will state that from staff writing of the recommendation, there was a recommendation of approval from the staff perspective. Largely, the recommendation of approval that came from staff tied to the connection and alignment of this request with the Vision 2034 comprehensive plan, which was adopted back in October 2025. Largely within that comprehensive plan, there's a mention of prioritizing and supporting adaptive reuse of our industrial areas and supporting the growth and expansion of cultural and arts activities. And so the primary support that came from City Plan staff came from an understanding that that was in kind of clear and direct alignment. It was also with an understanding that our light industrial district, as it currently is, has been amended a few times to permit a variety of non-industrial uses. And in its nature is much more of a kind of light mixed use commercial, nonprofit, and industrial district than purely an industrial district. Some of the uses that have been permitted include spaces like music schools and spaces that otherwise use the open space and physicality and architecture of an industrial area, but is more kind of comprehensively understanding that that is adaptable for the uses that we might see that require large venues, large attendees, and generally are flexible to change for the type of event that's held there. My understanding, and I cannot speak for the commissioners on the City Plan Commission specifically, but the conversation largely focused not on the alignment with the comprehensive plan per se, and not on the land use itself, but on a question of tax revenue that might come from arts and cultural uses and their placement. Typically, they may end up being nonprofit uses when they show up. And what that might look like if there's a tax revenue loss for the placement of those uses in lieu of industrial uses. Again, I'd add that we already have uses allowed within the light industrial district that vary. They could be run by nonprofits or for-profit entities. And as a basis for when we make zoning amendments, both the recommendations and in the criteria for the evaluation, it's largely on its alignment with the comprehensive plan and its promotion of public health, safety, and quality of life. And so that was the distinction between where the staff's recommendation of approval and the conversation with the City Plan Commission leaned towards a recommendation of denial. I will pause for a second if there's any questions. Hopefully that covered most of that.
Thank you for that explanation. I'll ask if there's any questions from committee. Alder Theodore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Very clear and succinct. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why it is so important for this to be as of right. Because this use can still be here and there is a process, and the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Alders, whoever may be gets to weigh in. Does your plan consider, why is it so important for it to be as of right?
Yeah. I think at a high level, it's largely a consideration of what is the purpose of making a special permit or special exception. In a lot of instances, we use that as a tool to be able to further evaluate the conditions of a use that's entering the space. And I think the as of right condition for a cultural use is appropriate because of how light their impact is in the surrounding area in most instances. Also considering many of the properties are within our light industrial districts, and particularly some of the ones I know the proponent is looking into. The properties are large enough where things such as site plan review and going through other levers of review through the City Plan Department and other departments is necessary. So if there are questions or concerns around parking, concerns about attendees and what that would have as a larger land use impact, there are still mechanisms to do that review through. So it's largely just seeing that as it's not a use that we viewed as necessary to add an additional layer of special permit or special exception review if those others exist.
Thank you.
Can you describe to me what the process of special permit
Yeah.
looks like?
Yes.
Yeah.
So depending on the designation, if it's a special permit, then it goes to the city plan commission. An applicant would submit an application for a special permit. They would have certain criteria they have to answer and be direct with related to getting that approved. It goes to the city plan commission, in which there would be a public hearing, and I'll run Sean if I'm missing anything since you're on the commission, you can add in. They would go to a public hearing at the city plan commission. It is discussed by the commissioners themselves, in which they have the opportunity to vote, and they have a period of time to decide if they want to vote in that meeting or extend to a future meeting. I'll add that if it's a special exception, which is kind of different concept, but different board is really the thing that differentiates them, is that goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals instead. They also have a set of criteria that are established that someone has to prove and write up within their application, and then can be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals unless there's a requirement that asks for the city plan commission to also provide advice on that.
When a client wants to do this or someone wants to start a nonprofit, do they often hire a lawyer? How costly and long is this process to get that special permit?
It depends. There are some applicants who will go in as themselves, and it happens that sometimes they're able to understand the regulations as is. Many times people will seek a land use attorney or an architect or design professional who understands the regulations to make sure that they're meeting the kind of point by point criteria there. But I can't speak to the exact costs. I think it depends on the professional you work with and your own team in that, but there is a financial barrier if you are hiring any kind of professional for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Director.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. Any other questions? Alder Marks?
Can you just speak to, it's my understanding that the city's going to be engaging.
Can you pull that mic if it very gently? Yep.
Thank you, Majority Leader, for the reminder. It's my understanding that the city is going to be engaging in a sort of citywide zoning review. Can you speak to city plan's sort of position on doing this piecemeal and for sort of waiting and doing the review, doing this as part of our planned overall review?
Yeah, that's a good question. So largely we are supportive of doing the changes to the zoning comprehensively and understanding that we want to think about these factors in relationship to each other. This is an understanding of both how districts are and if they should change, the uses within them. Largely staff support of this came from the fact that it is quite a minor change and in alignment with the changes that would be made. Is most likely than not that many of our light industrial mixed use districts are ones in which we would support this use change anyways, understanding that there is a need and support for more cultural and art spaces, whether they be profit bearing or not, within the city, and is in alignment with the comprehensive plan. So it was a consideration of that this is a form of use change that felt minor in nature. Things though related to map amendments, things that are kind of various uses being changed at once, especially if they have particular criteria that impact their larger land use experience for surrounding communities. I wouldn't advise those as piecemeal. So I think that takes the form of certain types of businesses that have sensitive uses, as we think of like convenience stores, as we think of bars and restaurants. Those tend to have a additional level of land use impact that we're thoughtful of not doing in a kind of piecemeal sense. But largely our alignment that we saw there was that this was fitting of what we would do in a larger change anyways.
Thank you, Alder. Any further questions? Alder Marchand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Director, for being here. I just want to state for the record that when I read that city plan report, I was very concerned by it because, I mean, I could quickly recognize that it was like the draft that the staff produced that was recommending approval, and yet the advice from the commission was denial. And there was very little narrative within the report to indicate why, which I found disappointing because as a commissioner, I would want the report to reflect the discussion that the commission had. So I called one of my fellow commissioners now, former commissioner, and I found that there were, from her recollection, this was one of the very few meetings that I did not attend. I think I've missed 2 city plan meetings over the last 14 and a half years. So my attendance is pretty darn good. But I was in Sweden that month, so I couldn't go. How dare I? But so I had to ask my colleagues, what's your recollection of the discussion? And the former commissioner told me that yes, the issue of tax exemption came up and was discussed, but there were other issues that came up as well, including, well, this is one location, but how about the other locations across the city, and what other kinds of uses would it be adjacent to, and wouldn't it be better for it to be a conditional approval as opposed to an as of right approval? And so that's the flavor that I got from one of my former colleagues on the commission who was there for that meeting that night. And so I just wanted to mention that on the record, obviously, to give you a chance to respond to that if you wish. But I found the report to be deficient. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that. So, trying to work backwards there. So when it speaks to the nature of the conditional approval, that was part of the conversation that did occur. I don't recall, and again, this is to the memory of that commissioner and other commissioners, how deeply it went into why a conditional approval was also on the table or of interest to the commissioners themselves. I think speaking to Alder Theodore's questions, we didn't get a chance to answer. There was a particular moment where there was a request for me to add context during that meeting, and it was denied for me to add that context. So to be able to kind of speak to that conversation is something that was not as deep as I would hope for. I think the other piece that you brought up there was thinking through the relationship of this to other areas and the fact that this is an applicant speaking for their site specifically. Our review of this was thinking of all of the IL districts, and the city plan department, if we were looking at any kind of use changes, the consideration of its citywide impact. And in our evaluation of its citywide impact, it seemed to be aligned still with the types of changes that would make sense. And an understanding of where our IL districts are located, many of them are either abutting commercial areas or abutting smaller residential areas, but they're lighter use of a cultural or arts activity than an industrial activity occurring in many places. So understanding that it's already a heavier use category in those districts than an arts and cultural space, we thought it was appropriate that those could enter those areas and be even less disruptive if they're abutting any kind of sensitive residential areas. Yeah.
Thank you for that additional context. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marshall. Before we go to Alder Theodore, would you just explain the conditional? That's my question. So that the committee can be up to date with all the terms.
Yes, yeah, I believe, and you can correct me.
Mr. Chair.
Very good. And correct me if I'm referring to it differently than how you're saying it, but my understanding is conditional in the way that it would be by special permit or by special exception. So the same logic that Alder Theodore was asking about is that it would go through a form of additional review prior than an as-of-right pathway straight to approval. So going to the City Plan Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals first.
Do you have, and I think we did get a list. Do you know approximately how many buildings
Or within that zone. I don't know the exact number. I know the applicant maybe submitted information to that.
she has? Okay. Yeah. Any other questions for our deputy director? Seeing none, thank you for giving us this update. If you could stick around just for a little bit, I'll be right back. Yeah. And we'll call the presenters if you would come. And again, if you would give your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Chair for all honorable members of the Legislation Committee. My name is Carolyn Cohn. I live at 131 West Park Avenue in New Haven. I'm a partner of Brenner Saltzman and Wallman, 271 Whitney Avenue, New Haven. And I represent Boston, New Haven, the petitioner for this text change.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Bannon. I'm the Managing Director of Boston, New Haven. I live at 10 Gruder Drive, Northford, Connecticut.
Hi, my name is James Farnham. I live at 86 Cottage Street in New Haven, and I'm the Secretary of the Board of Boston, New Haven.
Great, thank you. Are you going to give us a high level?
Yeah,
Very brief. Okay.
but please feel free if I'm being too low level to tell me.
I think what might be good is to address, maybe piggyback on what the deputy director said, and just bring clarity to that.
Sure.
You definitely were there for that meeting,
Yes.
in the city plan meeting,
Yes.
so give us a little bit more context of your thoughts
Yes.
out of that meeting. And I'd like to probably remind the committee that although Boston, New Haven is presenting and petitioning, this is really for a citywide zoning amendment And so our conversation is not going to be, why should Lost in New Haven have this? But more broadly, why this should be a zoning text amendment throughout our city.
Yes, and if we could go to the first slide, I think I heard your question, Alder Furlow. There are 15 IL districts in 12 wards. So Alder Marks had asked, what wards? And those, and it's very hard to see, but it's in the notebook. Those are the wards that the IL districts are in. Some of the wards have quite large IL districts, such as the wards in Fairhaven, wards in Hill, and some of them have quite tiny IL districts, such as Ward 3, or even Ward 27 has a pretty modest, one ward has one house in an IL district, so it's really all over the place. We were going to tell you, but I can answer what you asked first. We were going to tell you what outreach we've done to these 12 elders. And would you prefer me to talk about something?
Yeah, I know you've done some outreach and we appreciate that outreach. And I know that was part of the discussion or a question from the last committee meeting. But I did see emails that you've reached out. And this is our second meeting.
Yes.
So they certainly had chance to come and to give testimony if they had any concerns.
Yes.
So we'll just breeze right past that part.
Okay, we'll breeze right past that part. We did invite them on two occasions to the museum. So the two things I wanted to mention about this. We did unfortunately focus way too much on Western New Haven at the City Planning Commission. The information that we have given to you at the May meeting and tonight, which I hope you'll allow a little bit of testimony, is much, much broader and more expansive, and how it affects all the 12 districts. But based on the information, and there is a transcript of the City Plan Commission deliberations, there were 4 commissioners present, and Commissioner Gary did vote in our favor, and each of the other 3 commissioners gave their own reasons. There was not a consensus among the commissioners. So Commissioner Goldfield was very upset about taxes. He was very concerned about the fact that New Haven supports so many nonprofits. This would be a nonprofit as opposed to our surrounding communities. And he was quite vocal, and he was the first commissioner to speak. Commissioner Radcliffe is concerned about children, whether or not the IL district was going to have heavy trucks and lots of noise, and there were children visiting our museum or any other museum, and would it be safe for them? And what we did last time we were here is we showed how all kinds of activities involving children are allowed as of right in the IL zones. For instance, daycares. There's a daycare down the street, and I don't know if you're aware of the new daycare on Chapel Street in the IL zone with 300 children. There's music schools and dancing schools. There's residential use. So we believe that the IL district is safe for children, and if the museum is, but buses are going to stop, let the children off, they're going to do activities that goes on during every week. It's safe. It's a safe place for children. But Commissioner Radcliffe was concerned about that, and she didn't have the information that we provided last time, going to provide this evening. And she thought maybe it should be by special permit because maybe it wouldn't be safe for children. Commissioner, I'm sorry,
Van Hoosen.
Ben, he was sort of at a loss, and he thought, well, maybe, and that was a question that was raised tonight, it should wait until the complete zoning rewrite. We hope that you will not defer it for the complete zoning rewrite for the reasons that Mr. Zachariah gave, but also because this is an urgent need. And we know that's going to be a very complex process with a lot of input, as it should be, because it's the first rewrite in the century, basically. And we hope that you will not defer this decision for that. So they gave 3 separate reasons for their decision. In terms of a special permit, I also want to point out that we really need certainty, and we think that the cultural activities in New Haven really need certainty. And a decision just came down today from Superior Court on a special permit, and the applicant, it was on Edwards Street, an apartment building in the firehouse, and the applicant did prevail, but it was like 2 years. So the litigation is expensive and lengthy and uncertain, and it doesn't allow nonprofits to apply for community investment funds because they want to see certainty, they want to see it shovel ready. It doesn't allow us to go to our fundraisers, it doesn't allow us to plan for the future. And so on that, we'd like to say for that. And on this mixed use, which is something Mr. Zachariah talked about, the IL zones are really have become mixed use and zones, and they, you can see there are very few manufacturing, with very few sort of traditional industrial uses, and quite a bit of mixed use, as I say. So we do have, we know you don't want to rehash things, but we do have some important people here to testify, people from the city of New Haven, the Director of Cultural Affairs, Helen Rosenberg. We have people who couldn't come last time, and if I stop talking, I'm hoping they can be heard.
Well, let me ask the committee, because I think, because it was pretty thorough, the presentation last time. Is the committee okay with us just doing high level and hearing from staff that we haven't heard from, or do you need to see the presentation once again? Hopefully you've read through everything.
Thank you for the question. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so let's hear whatever new information you have, and whoever you have to testify will bring
Yeah,
them up.
let's have the testimony, and then if there are gaps, but we hope we don't want to do too.
Okay, yeah, I'm not concerned about the time, I just don't want,
To rehash.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through the 6 reasons slide or just look up it?
Maybe we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Just see what's up there.
Yeah, so after the testimony, we'll bring you back for permission, for questions from the committee.
That'd be terrific. Thank you very much.
So those from city staff who are part of the presentation, and then we will, then we'll go to the public portion,
Yes.
and then we'll bring you up last.
Thank you.
So let me just say that again, those that are part of the city staff will, and then after that, we will go to those that want to give public testimony. And then at the end, we'll hear again from the presenters to kind of wrap it up.
Helen Rosenberg, Economic Development Officer, City of New Haven, Office of Economic Development, 212 West Down Street, New Haven.
Charmaine McAllister, 576 Winthrop Avenue, Director of Arts, Culture, and Tourism.
Thank you. You have the floor.
I've been with the city as of tomorrow for 37 years, and my focus has mostly been in the industrial areas, more and more involved with environmental cleanups for various projects, also helping a variety of businesses find sites to locate, move to the city, expand. And the nature of these light industrial districts has evolved over the years, so that it's gone from my getting maybe 20 inquiries a year for industrial properties, industrial uses, to maybe 3 or 4 at the most. And what I'm working on now is getting cleanup money for conversions of industrial or industrial type property into housing. So there's been a lot of that happening, and some service uses, one cultural use, which is Next Haven, which converted the old McAllister Bicknell industrial property on Henry Street into a cultural use that I think has added a lot to the attractiveness of the art scene in the city. And I did notice today when I went on the tax site that it was bought by an entity that's not Next Haven. Next Haven is the tenant, so that they do pay real property taxes. So that's one arrangement that could protect that income. And I think that as has been said, the light industrial areas are becoming more mixed use. On River Street, we have a proposal for a daycare center in an old industrial building. Science Park is new residential, and it's Westville. We used to have a big industrial area around Lake and Whaley. We have manufacturing is residential. Schools are in the old geometric tool property. So this has been kind of a long time evolving, and it wouldn't be unusual to see it continue in that direction.
And before you give your testimony, I'd like to recognize our colleague from the 6th Ward, Alder Rodriguez. Welcome.
Thank you. My apologies for my lateness.
To piggyback off of Helen, using Next Haven as an example, Next Haven has added to our rigor as a city, as we sit as the state cultural capital. And as folks, as Deputy Director Dr. Wise said, this speaks to the vision of 2034, but also our cultural equity plan that we adopted as a city in 2022. What we have written is to expand the footprint of cultural institutions to every corner of the city and repurposing vacant and underutilized areas for community use. So this does stand in alignment of what we've agreed to as a city, and I do believe will add several opportunities that, as Helen pointed out, for tax purposes, but also economic drivers as well for our city.
Great. Anything else to add before we ask? Okay. Committee, any questions for? Yes, Alder Theodore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both. I'm seeing up there, it says that it seems like there's one vacant building in the IL zone. That feels surprising to me. Or maybe NA are also vacant. I guess I was wondering if you could paint a bigger picture of how much vacancy there is in this
There
area.
are a lot of buildings, and on River Street, we have some parcels, redevelopment parcels, and we haven't gotten many inquiries for people to build on. We had the movie studio, and that kind of fell apart. So, and then in that area, and that's the major area where there's actual available properties, but there were 3 older industrial properties that have since been bought. One's for the daycare center, one is going to have an industrial use, Pen Globe, lighting manufacturing, plus a job training entity called Match will be there. And then the third one, the former Hardy Press building, is still kind of in flux. But as far as other vacant manufacturing buildings, I can't think. Well, there's it's not an IL zone, but there's Whaley and Fitch in Westville. It's a sort of in Westville. That's vacant.
But you wouldn't say there's an abundance of vacant buildings.
No, that's, I mean, that's the main one that I can think of.
Yes.
Been sitting there so long,
Yeah.
and it's hard to adapt some of these older ones for manufacturing use. Latin has a lot of columns in it, and then in the Mill River district, we've had kind of the opposite happening from a more intense use, like some of the residential uses, to like the old Simpkins factory is now laydown area for Gateway Terminal, and HBI's has become a couple of warehouses, which are nice looking, but they're not, they don't employ a lot of people or have a lot of like equipment that will generate personal property taxes. And then, I got the name of the factory that was on, off of Grand Avenue, and that's now Layton contractor, and they're making asphalt, I think, so that's
Thank you.
intensive use.
Yeah. I thought the model you described of Next Haven, where property taxes are still being paid on that land, was interesting. There's no way to guarantee that that's what will happen with these nonprofit or cultural institutions that come in, correct? That was just the choice of that particular.
Ask our zoning expert whether that or yeah.
I can speak to, that is a very unique moment, but I also think it still is a moment from driving people into the city as well. If it does turn into a cultural institution, you're gonna end up having dinner probably, right?
Totally.
You're gonna get gas here, you're gonna go to the store. You know, so there's other avenues that I believe will bring economic value, even if it does not bring taxes per se.
So you're not trying to suggest that the Next Haven model is necessarily replicable through law?
I think everything's conditional. I don't think it's fair to put that standard on everybody, especially as we think, as we're speaking for this amendment affecting the whole city.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I'd like to just, I'm gonna push a reset button. I know the taxes were brought up, but this is not about taxes. This is about whether we should expand this particular nonprofit not having to jump through hoops to be able to have a building in the IL zone or the light industrial zone. We as alders, we are concerned about taxes and buildings, but that's not what this meeting's about. We'll handle that in another meeting. Budget. Or finance, where Mr. Chair is with us. Does anyone else have anything to ask these two city staffers? Certainly. If you would grab that microphone, Alder Rodriguez.
Our city has culture all over. The entire city, our schools, our universities. We have buildings. I'm trying to understand what is it specifically that you need to house in a building when really New Haven is culture. We have to think about our children. We have to think about the locations. For example, on my board, we do have a number of buildings. Okay, but we've looked at those buildings for a number of different reasons. And we always think about traffic and people when we're looking at those locations. So it's very important to look at that and to really see what is it really what you're asking. Because we have all of our buildings are accessible to non-for-profit, our schools, our libraries, and they're big buildings. And we've invested a lot of money in those buildings. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder. I can speak to that. Whenever there is a cultural building, a cultural element, it actually makes the neighborhood safer. There actually is a low risk of violence, altercations, anything like that. So the presence of culture, the arts in general, brings down any potential conflict. And I will say, we do have culture everywhere in our city. We are blessed in that, but we are short on venues. We don't have a venue for everything in our city. And yes, our libraries are great, And our schools are great, but they are not at times fitted for what we need. And they also have closing times, right? Like our library at the latest closes at 8, you know? And I think this is an opportunity to prepare ourselves for where our city is going. You know, we have 30 wards, and our libraries are in 5, we have 5 libraries, right? And we have schools in almost every ward. But we still need more space. And I think this is more of an addition to preparing for what's to come. If we are in fact the cultural capital, right? But we are not fully prepared for what's coming our way. We are not fully prepared to receive the overflow and the influx of amazing things that's coming our way.
Who would define where the event or what kinds of events would take place? And what would be the impact at that moment in time for that specific event in the peoples that would be impacted by the event? Would it truly be our community children, or would it be outsiders? You just explained this is a city-wide, not a neighborhood, nor a ward, but in fact a city-wide. So you're talking about multiple population coming in to wherever the venue that you accept or the place that you accept is going to exist. So who will define where the culture events, and what will be the area, and how is that area chosen? How would you make others aware of when? Because depending on the cultural event, we know there may be individuals who are interested in that cultural event, but there may be individuals that are not. But nonetheless, it's going to impact everyone that's around that particular site or venue or location.
I was
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Cultural events, I think this is where the management teams comes in. And I think no entity opens in the city, right? You can't just open a building, you can't open a venue without going through city plan. You know, you can't put in a permit for an event without going through the city. So there are already processes in place to check what's happening. So I don't think we are at risk as it may seem. Whenever an event goes through a permit process, our city team is very thorough in how it goes through. They ensure that there's enough insurance coverage, that the fire department is present if needed, that the police department is present if needed. So there are coverages in place. And our department, if a flyer does come our way, and we are in fact asked for support, we check it. We check what we put out. We don't just, my department does not just, put a stamp on something and put something out through our socials without understanding the context of what the event is. And knock on wood, a lot of our cultural events have not caused an issue. Our cultural events have not ended up in violence in any way, have not done anything but added to. And as Carolyn was saying before, I think in New Haven, we lead with intention. If there are children present, if there are young people present, anyone who's present, we go above and beyond to make sure that they're welcome, that they're safe, and they have what they need. So I don't foresee us just letting anything willy-nilly come through. But I do understand the concern for that, because we're responsible for those here in our city and those also coming to our city.
Mr. Chair, one more question, please. Thank you. Precisely, thanks to the requirements that we have, so that individuals come, they ask for permits. We look at what in fact is coming into the particular area, neighborhood. We explore that, we put in the safety guards in place to ensure that you're here today is in effect to alleviate that, so that any cultural or art can be presented in the particular site that you wish to, at some point in time, obtain and hold for that specific purpose. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, this is about an amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, about text language for vacant buildings and IO zones.
For the purpose of owning
Right, so this is not,
the
so,
premise.
right, so we're not discussing the probability of events. I'm not even sure which way to go with that, but any event that comes through, if it goes into the street, is gonna require an alder for a street closure. If it's several streets, then it's gonna require the full board of alders. And so this text amendment is not going to exclude any of the process that we have in place that would secure our residents. Yeah, and then I think we'll pick up more on this, Alder Rodriguez, in
Thank you,
discussion.
Mr. Chair.
I think in discussion we'll
Thank
talk
you.
more. Any other questions for our city staff? Alder Carmen Rodriguez?
Thank you, Majority Leader Olderfella. And again, sorry for my lateness. And I call it, my apologies, I came in late, but what I'm hearing and what I'm saying, and I appreciate how this is drafted where it lets what affected wards, and I'm going to remove the word affected. It sounds like I see that my sixth ward is here. And I have to say, you've been at the boathouse and you've done events, great events that brought out a lot of folks. And to that, I thank you because there was a lot of messaging out. What I'm seeing with this possible amendment coming through is so that the broader areas that may not be able to go downtown or to the Long Wharf, specifically, I'm gonna say in this ward, I see that you have something in Long Wharf and you're trying to grow that base so that more of our children and adults, all of us in the city as residents can be able to partake.
Yes, those specifically that fall under the IO zone.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think maybe the confusion is coming in how this was written, as it is saying to permit cultural activities. And I think that's where maybe some of the confusion may be coming from. That people are thinking that perhaps there's going to be things outside of the building.
Culture zone.
Yeah, a culture zone. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Alderman.
The whole city's a culture zone.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, okay, we will continue pushing. Anything else you wanted to add? Oh, yes, Alderman Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank both of these two fine city staff for their service to the city. And I just want to note for the record that Ms. Rosenberg has been before the City Plan Commission many times to recommend, and to this body to recommend that we receive grant funding from the federal and state governments to remediate brownfields in different portions of our city, but especially along over in the Fairhaven neighborhood. And it's very important. Like, the city has been very active in reclaiming its former industrial areas, that the industrial use is largely a ship that has sailed, and that figuring out how to support and foster other kinds of activity and uses in those areas has been a pretty significant preoccupation of economic development and other city agencies. And so I think that thank you for those efforts, Ms. Rosenberg. And there's no doubt that New Haven is the cultural capital of the state, and we would like to state it. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that's not so much a question as it is a quick statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. Any other questions or comments for these two? Seeing none, we will go to the, thank you.
Thank you.
For presenting. We will go to the public portion of this, for this item. Is there a sign up?
I got it.
And so we will call each person, we will give you 3 minutes, more or less, to testify. Please give your name and address for the record. I'm going to ask Older Theodore to keep time. Would that be okay?
3 minutes, all right?
3 minutes. And I'm
Just
going to
those two
ask
things.
Alder Marchand to help me
Oh.
with this. This looks like
Hope Chavez?
Hope Chavez. If you give us again your name and your address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Hope Chavez. I live at 63 Howard Ave. So I think folks have covered a lot of the talking points today, but I think it's important to flag here that I work for the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. I've been in the role for almost 3 years as executive director, and really my job, much like Shaw's, but distinctly for the region actually, is to look at arts and culture as an ecosystem and try and support the ecosystem. So we don't make art, but we help make it possible for others to make art. And I want to underscore what Shaw said earlier about venues. I cannot actually stress enough to you how much of the feedback I get from artists and from arts organizations is all of the myriad of challenges with having venues, whether we're talking about rehearsal or performance venues, studio spaces, affordable places to live, right? But space is just a challenge. And we know this is true for housing and so many other purposes as well, and small business activity. But it's really affecting our ability as a sector to grow. And one of the challenges also on top of that is the equity of access. So I think, Theodore, you've highlighted some of the costs, or you've asked folks to kind of address some of the costs, the time, the multiple barriers of entry. I think city government works best when it tries to make those equitable, right? Don't just make it so permissive that there's no process, but also don't make it so arduous that we prevent further innovation and creativity. And then there's also that equity of access that Alder Rodriguez flagged around neighborhood equity, right? So whether or not there's cultural activity really activated in every neighborhood of the city. There's certainly a density here in the downtown area. That's even where the Arts Council's offices are. And a lot of that's because of industrial zones and where those spaces exist that might be able to receive development. It's not true that there's a bunch of nonprofits waiting in the wings ready to buy up all these spaces, and they're not taking in tax dollars right now, the vacant lands anyway, but it's not like there's a bunch of them in the wings ready to permanently force them to be non-taxable spaces. That being said, there are many, many folks interested in using industrial spaces for a myriad of artistic and creative activity. I can always run folks through the numbers of how much we contribute to the economy of New Haven through other forms of tax revenue, like income taxes and other taxes generated through people attending cultural activities and then buying food and staying at hotels and things like that. That's never helpful. But the real hope that I have here is that you will look at the long game. And really, I think someone said earlier, moving away from a sort of piecemeal way of addressing these kind of zoning issues. We already have mixed use neighborhoods. I would not advocate for the removal of any sort of safety precautions. I would actually urge us to look at other cities across the East Coast that have actually increased economic prosperity, increased safety, increased community well-being, because there are places that look beautiful, that draw people in together and experience art, storytelling, creative practice, etc. So for me, this is a no-brainer as a way to move that forward and create some gentle incentives that allow us to do that kind of innovative leadership. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Seeing none, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Thea Bucksbaum, followed by John Warwick. Good evening, your name and address for the record.
Thea Bucksbaum, 425 West Rock Avenue, New Haven, 06515. And I'm going to read this because, as you guys all know me well enough, I get nervous when I speak in public, even though you're not really public, you're definitely in public. Honorable Alders, I'm submitting testimony in support of the proposal to expand the allowable uses under the City of New Haven IL zoning code to include the proposed arts uses. My name is Thea Bucksbaum. I live directly across the river from 781 Whaley Avenue, a blighted old mill building that has had a significant adverse impact on our quality of life for nearly 20 years. Vacancy and blight do not stay put. They travel, radiate, and seep into neighboring buildings, neighboring streets, and neighboring lives. I know this because in 1996, my husband Garwadam and I took on a similarly blighted property at 425 West Rock Avenue. At the time, it housed an illegal business on the ground floor, a gang meeting center on the third floor, and feral cats on the second. The roof had failed and the building was a moldy mess, as are many of the industrial buildings around New Haven, the remaining industrial buildings that are underutilized. Neighbors did not allow their children to play outside. The building's distressed presence extended far beyond its walls. Since then, as what I can only describe as I can only describe myself as an accidental developer, I have worked alongside a group of local stakeholders, including New Haven school teacher and New Haven librarian, to create Arlo, Art Lots West, New Haven's only mixed-use, mixed-income, affordable artist housing in downtown Westville Village. Together, we renovated and built 36,000 square feet in downtown Westville. Today, I personally manage 8 buildings comprised of 35 commercial and residential units. Our 8 commercial spaces, small businesses, all locally owned, employ more than 40 people. The Art Lots West development has generated direct and indirect benefits that have repeated in similar developments around the country and the world. Look at the Torpedo Factory in Fairfax, Virginia, West Beth in New York City, Art Space in Hartford, or Long Island City in general, which still combines light manufacturing alongside museums, artist studio, commercial businesses, and housing. And it's a totally desirable neighborhood to live in. It's one of the hot New York neighborhoods. Similar transformations have happened that I have personally visited in Mexico, France, and the Netherlands, and many other places. People begin coming to neighborhoods once seen as undesirable or unsafe. Property values increase, housing developments and businesses of all kinds begin to see these areas as viable investments. In many communities, property and business owners use the presence of an arts or cultural destination as a selling point, an amenity for prospective residents, employers, and business owners. We have seen exactly this pattern in Westville since Arlo's founding. The 2 apartment buildings that were developed in Westville sell themselves as in New Haven's artist neighborhood. Expanding the zoning code to reflect this opportunity will not create a nonprofit feeding frenzy. Nonprofits can't feed in a frenzy in this world, nor will it prevent light manufacturing, such as a cheese production facility being considered by the Zanelli brothers, owners of the fabulous Zanelli restaurant in Worcester Square, from opening nearby. What changing the zoning may do is expand possibilities for creating more vibrant, thriving social and economic opportunities in a dozen or more New Haven neighborhoods. Recently, when a commercial space 1 block from 781 Whaley Avenue, the building I mentioned across from where I live, became vacant, multiple interested parties looked, loved the space, and walked away. They stated plainly the condition of 781 Whaley Avenue was the reason. The ongoing opportunity cost created by vacant buildings cannot be overstated. Vacant and underutilized buildings are not merely unsightly or unhealthy. They actively harm adjacent property owners, depress taxable property values, and reduce the city's ability to provide services. Please act within your powers on our behalf. That's it. Anyone?
Thank you. Any questions?
Do you have any questions? I was very concerned about their concerns.
Thank you.
And we have had none of those problems in Westville, and we've been at it now. Our development is now 20 years old.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Nice. I'm going to my anniversary dinner.
Happy anniversary. Mr. Warwick? Followed by, looks like Benita from Yale University.
For number 3.
Yes.
That's for another item?
Item 3.
For another item? Okay,
The third item.
okay. And then someone, Bill? Oh, Bill. Dolly? Is that for this item or? Juice bars. Okay, okay. Yep. You have the floor. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's John Warwick, 112 Huntington Street, New Haven. I am a commercial realtor and commercial investor, real estate investor. I feel like so many intelligent things have been said on all sides of the table on this issue tonight. I'm kind of everything I wanted to say has been said, but I have a different perspective. We have, as a commercial leasing company, represented some of these buildings. Helen Rosenberg referenced some of them, say in the Mill area, in those districts, vacant buildings, IL buildings that were formerly light manufacturing that have had problems leasing up despite our best efforts. One thing that I think is wonderful as somebody who's lived in New Haven for 56 years and worked in commercial real estate for the last 30 in downtown is this effort to bring these cultural institutions all through our communities. It is truly a diversification of what I grew up with in the 70s, 1970s, not 18, where all the culture was just in the immediate downtown or going up Whitney Avenue past Audubon. So it is so nice to see Next and these artist spots around the city. I worked 30 years ago with Newt Skank. He was an attorney in town leading the charge on Hamilton Street to turn vacant housing, vacant industrial buildings, manufacturing into housing. And that kind of idea has always stayed with a lot of New Haveners. How do we turn these old blighted buildings in these kind of vacant neighborhoods into places with life? And so I am deeply in support of this effort to see an allowance for cultural institutions in these spots. It brings life into these neighborhoods. And as somebody who has, as a commercial real estate broker, tried to lease them and spent many hours bringing people through from not just New Haven, but as far away as New York and other states to see how challenging it is in our kind of, 1,000,000 square foot Amazon distribution center world, which we now see is not in places like our IL zones. It's in Wallingford or Windsor Locks, where they're building these warehouses for distribution, but also manufacturing. And so my feeling as a commercial realtor and commercial real estate investor is to see a revitalization in these neighborhoods. And I really firmly believe that putting an allowance for cultural institutions to belong there will have immense economic benefit.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to give testimony on this item? Anyone wishing to give testimony on this item? Anyone from the public wishing to give testimony on this item? We'll call the presenters to come back up for your final statement. I think we're good. I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. So just final statement, and then if the committee has any questions, I think we'll do it.
We could just advance the slides to.
Perhaps Mr. Farge.
Maybe Mr.
Maybe she'll help us advance the
we will
slides for
probably-
Attorney Cohn.
Sure, you want to go to the
It's just a
6 reasons.
And then we'll probably see the name address again for the records.
I'm sure I can.
I was Carolyn Cohen, 131 West Park Avenue, New Haven.
Cynthia Bannon, 10 Rita Drive, Northford, Connecticut.
James Farnham, 86 Cottage Street, New Haven.
Great, thank you.
So this is what you've heard from the speaker, so we really don't need to elaborate on this very much. But as you heard from the City Plan Deputy Director, it's consistent, it's particularly consistent with goals 1 and 3, which are to bring museums and cultural uses to the neighborhoods, increase support for promotion of the arts. It's consistent with the Cultural Equity Plan, which again is to bring the culture to all of the neighborhoods in New Haven. The second is that, as you've seen, the Isles has already evolved into a mixed-use district. And I just want to say that in case it wasn't clear, that museums and art galleries and libraries are as of right uses in the residential districts and in all the business districts except for the BE. So in terms of being safe or safe for children and our safer neighborhoods, the Board of Lawyers has already determined that it's good for families. The zone change will support the development of underutilized buildings. You've heard of that. And the one that we want to go into, 60 Hamilton, the one we want to expand to is a vacant warehouse that's very strange shape and nobody would ever use it for anything today. It will not displace industrial uses, you've heard that. And you've heard that they're an economic engine for New Haven. And last time you were given a study that showed millions and millions of dollars coming to New Haven in the year 2022 because of cultural uses. So we thank you for your patience with us. And this is very, very important to us.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Any questions? Alderman Marchand?
No question, just want to thank Attorney Cohn for the usual thoroughness of the presentation and the materials.
Well, thank you for your patience in listening.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So we'll hang around.
Okay, we're on to our next item. Is the presenter here for item 249 Legion Avenue, OR-2026-000?
We're here.
Great. Come on down.
You can do a PowerPoint, but I'm not sure if I can pull it up or. I think you might have it. We could just flip through it if that's easy enough.
Do we, you hear me? Excuse me. Okay.
It's brief, so I'm happy to just flip through the packet if that's,
We can flip it. Do we? Yeah. Colleagues, you mind flipping through the packet? So we don't even look at this anyway most of the time. It's mostly.
Yeah. Page 50.
That's what materials.
Page 63.
You see a map on.
No,
continue with that?
it's like this.
Yeah.
I have some extra copies if anyone needs them.
Page 100.
Yes.
Page 100.
Page 100 of the small page. Yeah.
What you have is no. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Danielle Mercury. I work at the law firm of Brenner, Salzman, and Wallman with the esteemed Carolyn Cohn, 271 Whitney Avenue here in New Haven, and I live at 60 Ledgeview Lane in Guilford, Connecticut. And I'm here tonight with Richard Urso.
Hello, my name is Richard Urso. I am the owner of the building at Legion Avenue, the property that includes the Bacon Rite Aid and the Learning Experience building. Excuse me. And I currently live in Vermont at 259 Lynn Hill Road, Manchester.
Well, thank you to the chair and members of the committee. This is my first time before you, so just appreciate any nerves that I might have.
We'll be gentle.
Thank you. So as I said, I'm here tonight on behalf of RBU and Kids. As Richard mentioned, RBU and Kids Real Estate owns 249 Legion Avenue. We are here in support of an amendment to the zoning map to allow the parcel, it's a little bit less than 2.5 acres, to be located entirely within the BD2 Central Business District. Currently, the property is split between the BA district and the BD2 district. You can take a look at the first page of the PowerPoint. It's just a site overview. I'm sure most of you folks are well acquainted with this location. Outlined in red is the 249 Legion Avenue, where we have the Rite Aid building located on the corner, and we also have the Learning Experience, which is a daycare center located on the site. It's just another picture showing the layout of the parking. 249 Legion Avenue represented a portion of what was called the Route 34 Superblock, I believe. That was subject to a development, DLDA, Development and Land Disposition Agreement between the prior owners and the City of New Haven. And under that DLDA, the Rite Aid building and the Learning Experience were constructed. RBU and Kids purchased the property after the Rite Aid was complete in December of 2018. And unfortunately, I know we're just talking about vacant buildings. Rite Aid closed the Legion Avenue store sometime in 2023 after sort of winding down business, and then subsequently Rite Aid declared bankruptcy. And I think the only Rite Aids we see these days are vacant ones up here, at least. And the store has just sat vacant since then. The next map just shows, actually, if you look at the, if you look online at the GIS map, it looks like the property is located in one zone, but it's actually split between the two zones. And so we filed an amendment, a request to amend the zoning map to locate the property completely in the BD2 district. And the ultimate goal, as you can imagine, behind the request to rezone the property is to come up with a development of the site that makes it viable and vibrant again. The split between the two zones, they have very similar uses that are allowed, but the BD2 has a much more significant FAR, which is a floor area ratio, which would allow for a more robust residential development. We went before the City Plan Commission with the application back in March. We received a favorable report for the rezoning of the property. And after that meeting, I should maybe even take a step back. When the Downtown for All overlay district was moving forward, we noticed that it stopped right at our property line. And so we heard a lot of the hearings and how favorably the overlay zone was received by everyone. I think Richard said on his first CPC meeting where everybody was so excited that we could have, these robust residential developments with significant affordable housing components, which, continues to be an issue in New Haven and elsewhere. And as part of that overlay district process, we asked if our site could be included in the overlay. But the district, had sort of made its way through various committees by that point, and it just seemed like, maybe we were a little late with the request. So when we filed the application to rezone the property to be in one zone, we also asked for the property to be located in the overlay district. So following our City Plan Commission meeting where the CPC did favorably vote for the BD2 district and the overlay zone, we met with two of the alders. So our property is in Ward 3. We met with Alder Hubbard and with Chair Walker Myers to discuss the proposal of rezoning for the site. And this is not one of these applications where, we're ready to hit the ground running with an application. It's, somewhat preliminary to get the uniform zoning first and then look at a redevelopment next. It was pretty clear, Richard can correct me if I'm wrong, that at least with President Walker Myers, she did not want to see the large tall buildings that the overlay district would provide for. She didn't think that was the right spot for it. And so we quickly said to both her and to Alder Hubbard that if that component of the request was a problem, that we were happy, to scale that back and just to have the site rezoned so it's in the BB2 district. So we had a meeting with them. We followed up with them with emails and calls after, and understand that there's sort of a desire in the community to use the building, to repurpose the building for a different use. And I can speak somewhat to that, but Richard has, unfortunately spent a tremendous amount of time and resources trying to attract a new tenant, to this building. In fact, I think before Rite Aid even went out of business, they were trying to secure a new tenant to take over the space. And that was, some years ago. But in sort of multiple years of failed attempts at trying to get somebody new into the building, and really just the stress of having, a significantly underutilized property that is valued quite high and was sold at a very, very high price. Richard started just sort of looking at other options. And because of the split in the zone, a residential redevelopment was challenging with the 2.0 FAR of the BA district. And so we thought it was, sort of made sense to go forward with the BD2 for the entire site. Fast forward to today, we did get, and we submitted some letters from our neighbors on the site, the continuum of care, the former owner of the learning experience, and then Laz Parking, all of whom are eager to see a redevelopment of the site. I won't sort of get into details, but as was said earlier, a vacant building is somewhat of an attractive nuisance, and I think we all know that nothing good happens in a vacant building. And so we submitted this application, and then before we came before you this evening, we were provided with a letter from Alder Hubbard. Not sure if you folks have that in your packet, but she expressed strong opposition to her application. I did speak with her after, in part because of the overlay district that we had discussed, which does allow for very, very high buildings. But she had concerns about a residential redevelopment just in general, and had some outreach with various members of the community, which we were not a part of those discussions. So I spoke with her by phone. I, said we would like to continue the dialogue about the site. And, she and I had discussed possibly continuing tonight's public hearing to the next meeting. So we could meet with her in the next few weeks and some other neighborhood stakeholders to see if we can come up with, a proposal that really works for everybody. I understand that the public hearing had been noticed, and, people in the seats might want to discuss it or give their opinion, and so we're happy to be here and go forward. But we would ask at the conclusion of this matter this evening that the matter is kept open and continue to the next meeting so we can have that opportunity. Whew, that's all I got for right now.
So you're saying don't vote no on this tonight?
Don't vote no at all, but yes, not tonight.
Okay, sir, do you have anything to add?
I can only add that, as Daniela said, Rite Aid was trying to lease the building for a period of time, and then once they declared bankruptcy, it was up to me to try to find a tenant or to sell the property. And I contracted with CBRE, who they went through a long list of clients or possible tenants, which I have here. There was no reaction. I also spoke to Cushman & Wakefield to see if they had any different perspective, and there was not very much encouragement there either. the idea came that the property in today's market in that area could be underutilized and might be a good place for residential development. So that's what we're really here to talk about and see if it fits and what questions we can answer.
Any questions from the committee on this overmarching?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to keep track of the FAR. And so you said that the BDA 2.0. We know that the BD2 plus the downtown for all brings it up to 6. What would the BD2 by itself bring it up
The
to?
BD2 would be 6 as well. I believe the height would be
The maximum height.
the maximum height, and maybe the minimum unit size is also a factor.
Right.
I would add that the property is located in the strong market, so any residential redevelopment would have to have some affordable component. Obviously, the overlay district has a more robust affordable component, and as I said, sort of the feedback that we heard at the CPC hearing on the district seemed like, that there was a real desire to have, really tall buildings, provided that they had a more robust affordable component.
Sure, maybe I should comment. I did have Beinfeld Architects take a look at doing a feasibility study of the site, and they, their report was that within a 6-story building, which is basically what the continuum is, and the hotel, that enough units could be put in there to make it a viable project. And that there was enough, with some under building parking, and there was a way to make this work for the site.
Just in terms of thinking what could be possible with the zoning revision, we're talking about both the empty lot at the northwest corner and the former pharmacy as a potential development site that could go up 6 floors or something like that.
The parking lot right next to the pharmacy,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Yeah, and
the entire western edge of that super block.
That last, there's like a last slide which shows it's the, that gray building.
Mm-hmm.
That is, what the maximum would be allowed under the BD2. And I believe that, I think the thought would be, some retail, some commercial at the street level, and then residential above it.
My recollection is that downtown Pearl also eliminates parking requirements, which would be another consideration in terms of which zoning component to bring into play here.
But we are blessed with a large parking garage.
There is,
right? So
big garage.
I think
You would have to have some kind of agreement to use some of that garage.
I think
I did speak with, I guess
I don't want to go too far into a
Sure.
potential development because this is a zoning matter.
Yeah.
But I think you're right to point out that
there is a parking garage.
And I might point out that you would have to have, since I'm on the commission, I kind of know you probably need to have an agreement. But the downtown for all will relieve you of that responsibility, which is a factor for us to consider. Would we think it appropriate in that particular part of the city to have a tall building with no required parking? Parking could still be provided, but it would not be required if the downtown for all overlay were extended to that area.
Just to say, I did reach out to Laz when we first started thinking about this to see if there was a possibility for an agreement for parking if needed, and he was open to that.
Okay, so that helps me just imagine what size we're talking about and in what area that this zoning change would allow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions from the committee? Alderman Rodriguez?
And
Could you pull that microphone?
Thank you. And I don't know. Thank you, Alder. I don't know if it would be, how many stories if this was to come to fruition?
They were planning 6.
I think that would be the max. If you sort of look at the height of the building, I'm not sure if the hotel is also 6, but
It is.
you can see it's,
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. That's my only question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions?
Just,
Yep.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both. Just a clarification, you're asking that this be tabled so that you have more time for community input and working with the local alder?
yes, and I spoke with Alder Hubbard before, and she agreed to that. And our thought was to not go forward tonight, so so we could come forward, hopefully with the benefit of an agreement or a consensus, or if we can't find a consensus, then we can't find a consensus. However, because the hearing, been noticed and members of the public, have a plan to attend, we're going forward tonight. But yes, so we're hopeful that, we can meet with her. She's away next week, but meet with her the following week, and not just her, but other stakeholders. Because, Richard, certainly, this is not, we did not come to this lightly, and it's been, sort of years, unfortunately, in the making to get us to this point. And, we want to try every option available.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think my concern, let's give you a chance to answer. My concern is we don't typically do a zoning map amendment for a project. Right, so we're looking at it in the broader sense of what this will look like, and you have 2 alders that are saying 6 stories is too high for that area. And so you can say, I'm not going to build 6 stories, maybe I'll do 5.
Mm-hmm.
But once this is passed, you can build whatever you want, as long as it's within this regulation. And so that's just my concern. I'm trying to picture, I know what the building is, and I'm trying to picture what 6 stories would look like there. Yep. Yeah.
I think if you look at
I'm not brainstorming, but I'm just trying to imagine.
Well, I don't know how that,
Yeah.
so if I'm inappropriate, just tell
No,
me.
yeah, go ahead.
I think if you look at the other end of that block, it's sort of what it would look like with the continuum and the hotel, because they are both about the same mass visually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
I don't know
mean,
that
it's
that's
not.
Excuse me?
And I don't know that that's good.
I mean,
I-
that is.
It's something that,
And as I said, it's not, this wasn't sort of a rush to do this. I think it would be better for Richard. It would be better for a lot of folks if we were able to reuse and repurpose the building. And to today, we're still working on options for that. But the finances of it have been difficult, if not impossible. And, what's left is not good either. So we do understand the concerns, and we met with the alders, and we just didn't have a very substantive follow-up, but we want to do that because we want to do something that the neighborhood wants, and something that does make sense for the site. And they mentioned some of the uses, that they wanted, a roller rink, some recreational options, and, and honestly, some of those have even been, presented. But it's just the finances of it are making it very, very difficult to make something work in that building. I'm not opposed to it, and we're willing to, meet with the alders, and maybe there is another way, but we haven't found it yet.
I'll yield to all the marks, and we're not going to try to figure out what to do with that building in this committee, but we're going to just figure out whether or not we should extend this zoning, or amend this zoning, or whether we should pass over.
Maybe related, just, I'm the attorney, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. The current zone allows 2 floors, the BD2 would allow up to 6, and the overlay would allow more than that?
Yes.
Well, you and Alderman Sean went at it a little bit at a high level, can you?
Well,
break-
his level's much higher than
Can
mine.
you just break down a little bit?
It's the FAR, the floor area ratio, which dictates how tall, how high a building is based on the available amount of land, I think. And with the BA district, and this is just as a zoning lawyer, when you have like a split zone in the middle of a property, it always seems like sort of a good reason to rezone it so it's uniform. So part of it's BD2, that just has a 6.0 FAR. That would allow up to 6-story. The overlay district, I believe, it might even be a higher FAR. I have it somewhere in front of me. But so currently BA is 2.0, BD2 is the 6.0, but the overlay would be even higher than that. And so, as I said, it sounded like something folks wanted, and it wasn't until we met with the alders that they said, no, we don't want that for this site.
I just ask I'm sure we'll hear from the alders, but that is the 6 stories or more than 6 stories? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, in the downtown for all overlay, they did not want that. And President Walker-Meyer said that she specifically did not, she wanted that overlay district to end where it currently ends, which I believe is the parking garage.
And just to clarify, did they have an objection to up to 6 floors? Have you spoken to that yet? I just want to make sure. We'll hear from them directly, I guess. Thank you. I'm sorry, thank you.
I think Alder Hubbard's letter was, she said she's opposed to both of those. The BD2 rezoning and the overlay. I mean, the overlay district, as I said, was something that sort of, fell into our lap. We thought it seemed like a good, like an idea. That was not. And so we said at that meeting that we were willing to, I don't know if we needed to withdraw it, but if you, didn't vote to approve that portion of the petition, we understood.
Thank you, Richard.
Very quickly, I'm having trouble interpreting, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm having trouble interpreting the sketch. Is this the split between BA and BD2?
Yes, so the pink line, that is the portion of the site, yes, the larger portion is the BA district.
Got it. So you could build 6 stories here, but
Correct.
it would just be very small. This would be 2. Got it.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Any further questions? Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
Anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? Yes, Deputy Director? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get your name and address again, please.
Abdul Razak Zachariah, Deputy Director of Zoning City Plan Department of 341 Alden Avenue. Just coming for some clarifying points on downtown for all districts. Did not remove parking requirements, but it's in the IAZ zone. So if they provided an affordable mixed income development, then they would have the relief to not provide parking if they chose to do so. And then there's 2 kind of subzones of downtown for all. There's an inner and an outer core. What they're proposing would be part of the outer core, which is a maximum of 6.0 FAR. So they're already, if they do the BD2 change, they're at the maximum that they would get from that overlay anyways. If they're inner downtown, that's the biggest one. That's the 12 FAR that was approved a few months ago. Yeah. I don't know if there are any questions on that I can help answer as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? Anyone from the public wishing to testify? I don't have any names, so I'm just calling. Anyone from the public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none. Before we go to our next item, we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break, and we'll be back shortly. Well, there's 2 different. The one that this is in we kept it. But then you still put more units because the minimum unit size is smaller. So you could have height, but it's the zone change that provides the bigger height increase. It was good for you.
Yes, like possibly.
Oh. Hola.
Okay.
Okay, who's predicting the end of meeting time? Price is right, close
We
to
never
start
do
going
that.
over?
We
Come
never
on,
do that.
close to start going over?
Depends on how many questions you have.
Exactly, goes up to you
I
all.
don't predict.
That's why, you know, a guy just got indicted for today,
I can control it.
for, correct,
But I'm
for,
not bidding, just you.
yes, but you can
I
influence.
could swing it.
Yes,
For me,
yes, yes.
What do you get indicted
So,
for? You tell me.
basketball player for actually, doing exactly that. Let me see. And two up.
It was working before.
Yeah, we had two up. So let's see where the other one was. There were actually two screens. Try. Did you connect?
Yeah, it says I'm connected.
Okay, let's find it then. This is just a zoom. So it should have been. Let's see. Should have been.
Yep, there
You see it?
Yeah, that is actually my
Okay,
screen.
there you go. Okay.
Now I just need to do this. Look at that.
So proud of yourself.
I can control it from here.
That is your mantra.
Well, I have
I can control it from here.
I have a video embedded in it, and I don't want to have to get up and go.
I can control it from here. Evil teens. Okay with it? All right. I know. Trust me, I can relate.
So basically.
Like a chunk from the train station.
Yeah, they have a space there. This space is supposed to go for the 18.
This.
Like driving back and forth, right? That sounds awful.
So right
Yeah.
Which means. That's why. Yes.
I jumped out. Literally, I counted this truck 37 times. I counted 37 times immediately. Get off the highway, go up a mile. Come back down. It's George. Church, back up to the ground. They came to the ground.
Get ready for 4th of July.
Have you been, oh my goodness,
Slightly.
you would think, but it's.
Bounces all back to see it, so.
Just sit there with. There's not a kid. No, it's all 22 when I work back when I work.
Before I got out of the room,
Things that have more redundant. They did actually get the. Oh, yeah. Oh, so that's really. Okay. So did that come through you or you backed out?
I have left the activity mailbox. I think I'm still on every email.
Yeah. Partner meeting, I don't know what, didn't get the lease. Yeah.
No, I was trying to. How would you say? I just want to get to that stuff now. Now I have to share. Because of this.
Different interests.
I was pushing. Wasn't an ideal situation. No, I was pushing that too. Well, especially now, like the turnaround for their patient back in the future. More fights and everything. Hope so. It's a different constituency.
Well, also.
Yeah. There was, I mean, to try to feel the temperature of the water on this whole situation. Right, sure. It seemed like a good trajectory. Yeah, no, man.
Sit there in my own little world. And I was going picking people out that way. I'm glad she gave me this.
This is for going.
Yes, no.
Oh, this is
Yeah, I kept staying, but I didn't use it.
You sleep them alone? I thought they were following me out. Did you ask them to? Oh,
I'm just doing the connection.
Who proposed it?
Oh,
You know what I can go for right now? Some juice. Well, if you go to where the Hudson Shop is, there is a juice. I'm trying to think where they got juice.
It just makes me very, very sad.
The juice bar is an accessory use to a bar. That's just a juice shop.
We work on definitions, don't worry.
I'm just.
Oh.
I had juice every, all kinds of things. Fresh juice, sugar cane, right in the street, just. Huh? No.
Where were you? We're somewhere fun. Let me check it out.
Columbia.
Oh, like really out of town? Wow. So was it?
Riots. Crazy.
What?
I went through the presidential election, I didn't realize. And it was really.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
I was in Cali.
Yeah.
And the other thing, flags.
Definitely not the definition of a bring that up.
No, you're good.
Wow. It's incredible.
The Capitol Service, the hotel did hot dogs and hamburgers, salads, and bananas. And opened it up for the game on the widescreen.
Oh, fun.
Because they had World Cup games.
Oh, fun. Wow.
No. Oh, here? Most of us.
I did, yes. I mean, you must be honest. That's right.
No, you're good. No, be good.
Or you know what I said?
Absolutely. No, you're good. Let me run to the.
Deputy Fund Bureau.
It was up before you, while you were out on break, and then I have very strict timeout sessions.
So your machine timed out and you actually was separate.
It's 25
There's a presentation you show us, is that what it is?
Yes, we have hard copies too.
Good evening, we'll call this public hearing back into session. We'll invite you to take your seats. This is for OR-2026-0013. Our last item regarding the juice bars. So we'll just ask the presenters if you would come forward, please. And as usual, we will ask for your name and address for the record. I have some items that are being passed out.
Justin McCarthy, Chief Administrative Officer, 569 Orange Street.
Abdul Razak Zachariah, Deputy Director of Zoning, 341 Alden Avenue.
Rebecca Barrow, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, 192 West Rock Avenue.
I see some police back there. Were they going to also join us?
Sure. And we have the fire department too.
The fire department. Okay.
We brought everybody.
Great.
It's a public safety issue.
We'll, yep, we have one chair here and two over here. Police on one side, fire on the other. Is that how we do it? Okay. We can just have your name and addresses for the record, and we'll be one big family.
Yep, Daniel Sullivan, Supervisor for EMS, New Fire Department, 226 Philly Road, Haddam, Connecticut.
Brian McDermott, 1 Union Avenue, New Haven.
David Galuza, 1 Union Avenue, New Haven.
Good to see you all. You have the floor.
So we're here before you today for the first of two items to address juice bars. We're going to share. So we're here today to address, for the first of two items to address juice bars. Juice bars are a significant public safety. There's significant public safety concerns often tied to juice bar establishments, which have negative impacts on the neighborhood. We're proposing a zoning amendment to define and prohibit juice bars as an accessory use, which will prevent the creation of future juice bars. And that's an important part of liquor permit reviews. So we'll get into that a bit later.
New legislation was recently passed by the state that will allow us to update our regulations for current existing uses, and we will be communicating that for the August meeting. So what we're doing today is addressing future, but then we'll be working to give more control over existing. So first, what is a juice bar? A juice bar is a similar facility. It means a separate and limited area within a premise that is operated under a cafe permit or a cafe permit for just wine, beer, and cider, wherein non-alcoholic beverages are served to minors, wherein there is no sale, consumption, dispensing, or presence of alcoholic liquor as defined by general statute. What is a cafe permit? That's the important thing to understand. So a cafe permit is a liquor establishment that does not have a full kitchen. So it's not a restaurant. It is generally a nightclub or a tavern, a place where you wouldn't expect to see people that are under 21 years of age. But a juice bar is a carve out in statute that allows them to have an area or a night specifically for people 18 to 21 to join it. And it's only an accessory use to an establishment. It's not the establishment itself. So the most important reason is, why are we here today? We have a significant police impacts that are associated with juice bars. They typically attract a large crowd of underage patrons. There's significant evidence of underage.
You're disconnected.
Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to have it up as well. I'm on page 5. There's significant evidence of underage drinking, greater calls for service than comparable establishments. This includes assaults, fights, shootings, intoxicated and unconscious persons, robbery, liquor variations, disorderly conduct, sexual assaults, drunk driving incidents, and these include perpetrators and victims from all over the state. We have a video just to depict what happens in the district right outside of juice bars. And I'm sorry, it won't go on the big screen, but that is a typical night on Crown Street outside of what it's where several of these establishments are located. So, sorry, I couldn't bring it up on the big screen. And we have members of our police and fire department that can give you a little bit more color as to their typical nights outside of these establishments. Gentlemen?
Could you give us the night that, or when that was, to give us some context? That's not every week, right?
That is not every week. I have the date. I will have to get it back to you.
So it's probably a holiday or some.
Alder, it's important to know that the juice bar carve out is utilized by several establishments around New Haven. The police can go into more detail on it. However, many of these establishments utilize this as a marketing tool to get people downtown. So especially during college in periods, so your September, end of August to the end of May, roughly, this is used to attract a lot of that crowd downtown, even though it's everyone. And it's typically Thursday, Friday nights, and then they open Saturday nights as a non-juice bar. So a lot of these overlap each other, which is another concern. The area where that video was taken, there's actually 2 regular juice bar operations. And on this night, both, I believe, were in juice bar, what I'll call juice bar mode, which is the old 18 to party, 21 to drink marketing scheme, right? So that's what it is.
So I'll go. I'm the downtown district manager, so I'm pretty much the boots on the ground guy. Mainly Fridays and Saturday nights. Thursday nights not so much. I'm here, but I typically leave before the party job. The amount of kids that actually come down here on a Friday night, unless you're actually downtown observing it, and I know some of you have been downtown and observed it, it's astronomical, to be honest with you. And it occurs basically from anywhere from 9:30 at night, 10-ish, right through 3 o'clock in the morning. It creates a noise problem for the residents that are either housed at Church and Center or right on Crown Street or right on Temple as well. So the amount of issues we have on any given particular night are significant. And we typically run anywhere from 10 to 12, sometimes 14 officers down there. And quite honestly, we're probably understaffed, big time. There's thousands of patrons down there. And I'll give you a quick scenario. Back over the winter time, it was probably, I want to say, February-ish, March-ish. I was downtown. It was basic. I think it was like between 11:30 and 12 o'clock at night. I was standing on the corner of Crown and Temple, and a car was at the light at Crown and Temple. It made a left-hand turn onto Crown, which you can't do. It's a one-way. But this car actually made the turn. Now, I was in front of the parking garage at Gateway College. I immediately stopped the car and actually had the car pull in to the garage. The driver rolls down the window. It was a female. There was 5 people in the car, 4 females and 1 male. So the driver, I proceeded to ask a couple of questions. And the bottom line was this: everybody in the car was under 18. The driver was 16, right, from West Haven. There was 2 individuals. Everybody was from West Haven except for 2 other individuals. But I literally asked the driver, I said, why are you here? After she informed me that she was 16 years old, why are you here? Well, we're coming downtown to go into the clubs. Oh, really? You're 16 years old. It's 18 and over, typically, and that's not every night. So it was hit or miss, or maybe somebody tipped them off that it was 18 or over. I said, you're 16 years old. How old is everybody else in the car? Well, everybody proceeded to tell me their age, and not one person was over the age of 18. So the mentality of the kids that are coming down here, they're coming down here to either hang out on the streets, and typically they do. They don't even make their way into the clubs sometimes. Mm-hmm. And when they do make their way into the clubs, they are getting served alcohol. It's 100% happening. Mm-hmm. We have people come up to me. I have individuals come up to my cruiser window and say to me, you better go over into 144 Temple and check on IDs, because we got served and we're not even 18 years old. So we know it's happening, and we do partner with our state partners in DCP and the Liquor Commission, but it's not enough. We need to hunker down, and the new legislation that's coming in October, that's going to help us for sure. But this has to be on everybody's radar. It's for the health and well-being of the kids themselves, the neighborhood community, the police, the fire. He's down there every night with us too. EMS. It's a strain on public service and public safety. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of what we're trying to get accomplished here. I'll turn it over to Lieutenant McDermott.
Thank you. Just to explain a little bit about how these bars operate, how these businesses function, because the term juice bars is very vague. And what happens in these establishments is these are large capacity establishments with a fire capacity of at least a few hundred in each one of our targeted bars here. They have a fully functioning bar serving alcohol. They're close to the capacity crowd. 90% of the crowd is under 21. There's a small wall that's set up per state statute to divide the bar from the main area where all the underage individuals are. The underage individuals aren't allowed to go up to the bar. However, once one person goes up to the bar, there's no capacity on how many drinks. They can order as many as they can carry, and they're allowed to travel freely throughout the premises. So what happens is the drinks get distributed, and next thing you know, everybody in the establishment has a drink in their hand. I mean, we've seen it because some people have testified as far as the mess that gets left behind. In addition to allowing these underage kids to have access to alcohol, they also do a very poor job at containing the alcohol inside the building, whereas it now comes out into the street, which is why in the morning you see photographs. I know some were listed in the presentation here, where it's an absolute mess all up and down Crown Street, and businesses that have to operate during the daytime, or the residents there have to step over literal piles of trash to access their home or place of business. An additional strain of places on the police department is the fact that some of these individuals who are 16, 17 years old are all too familiar with the Connecticut juvenile statutes. And they're well aware that whereas if we're dealing with an 18 or over individual and they become such a problem, if they're starting fights, if they're committing acts of vandalism, if they're standing in the street intentionally blocking traffic, if we need to eliminate them from doing that downtown, we can arrest them, we can send them to jail. 16 and 17 years old, we can't throw the cuffs on them. We can't put them in the back of the police car and send them down to 1 Union Avenue for a detention facility. At this point now, we're tied up. We have to detain them. We have to make contact with the parent. Many of them live several towns away. Many of their parents are unaware of how far they are or even how to get here. So now all of our police resources are tied up for what, if the person was over 18, would take about 20 minutes or so to remove the person from the street. Now the officers are tied up for hours, waiting for a parent to be able to get down there. Some are woken out of a cold sleep. Some issues you can't even get a hold of a parent. So now it's an ongoing situation where you have to have these individuals in custody. And that's where it spirals to where it's costing significant amount for police resources. For a crowd that would typically require 10 officers, we're now going over 20 on some busy nights, typical staffing of about 16. It's tremendous effort for the officers to the point where we have a difficult time getting volunteers for this. So most of the officers who are there on involuntary overtime, being held over from their shifts. Again, it costs the city's overtime budget. In addition to that, as Lieutenant Caruso said, you have large crowds that gather around just for the chaos of it, is because you've got 400 here, 300 there, another 300 at another spot. They all let out at the same time, and these establishments obviously take no responsibility about over-serving patrons, putting any types of limits on the amount that's consumed. So now all of a sudden you have 1,000, 2,000, 16, 17, 18-year-old children who are intoxicated spilling out into the street at the same time. Just to be able to control that, and control that while also using restraint, being concerned for the safety of these juveniles, was a significant task for police, because again, not only they'll be jumping on vehicles, they'll be climbing on the parking garage, they've thrown projectiles off the parking garage on numerous occasions. And again, you're dealing with a 16 or a 17-year-old. It's different in the way you can apprehend an adult, the use of force that makes sense. So again, it's time consuming for the officers, just because we have to not only stop them from doing what they're doing, but we have to stop them from doing that with an increased safety for the suspect in mind as well. So it does create a burden there. And just the setup for the juice bars, it's a giant loophole that's been exploited by these businesses. If you look at what they're paying downtown for these rents, these are large capacity clubs. They're paying significant rents in prime real estate, and they can't make enough money to cover their rent. I mean, they're not even open, Sunday through Thursday, some of them, Sunday through Wednesday. They're only open 2 or 3 nights a week tops. And when one of these nights is devoted to people under 21 or even under 18, you've got to realize just where's the profitability? They're not selling food. They're not providing any real source of live entertainment. What's the markup going to be on a cranberry juice or a Coca-Cola? It's not enough for them to generate that revenue when they're staying in business. It's because the markup on the alcohol is significant. It's their business model to sell alcohol to children. And that's what we're aiming to stop.
And just to echo the point of Lieutenant McDermott and Galuza, on every one of those intoxicated persons, potential assaults, you're triggering a fire department response in the aspect of there's some sort of injury or illness there. And when we deal with this, trends have shown in previous studies, example like Ramaj, that high index of call volume goes up on those days noted. When you're responding out to the same location 3-4 times in an evening, you got to keep in mind the impact that takes on that district as well. While we can't control timing and no emergency is greater than one emergency, we are worried about response times, because if we're out 3 times at one establishment, what happens when another citizen or visitor of the city needs those same medical services? They may have a delayed response waiting for a further piece of apparatus or resource to make it to them. In addition, it presents several issues. You think of intoxication, you think, okay, they've had too much to drink, sobered up. When we look at that, especially when we get to the potential of minors and or even people over the age of 18 consenting adults, by regulation and statute in the state of Connecticut, if they don't have capacity, the ability to make an informed decision, responders holding a medical certification are bound by law to have them transported to a medical facility for observation. So you're now incurring more ambulance transports out of those locations. So in a system, in a public safety entity where day after day we operate on 911 calls that are usually out of our hands, right? Fate dictates, car accident, so many things go wrong. This is one of those aspects where by limiting this, we can actually prevent injury from a large scale or high angle approach.
And if we move to the next slide, slide 6, by way of example, we pulled one of the establishments that frequently operated as a juice bar. Again, only generally open 2-3 days a week, and compared it against similarly sized establishments that are open as restaurants. They also serve alcohol, but are open more frequently. And you'll see Ramaj, which recently closed, 269 calls for service between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2025, only between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m.
So really quick, Beck, I want to point this out. Most of the people who are calling 911 don't know where they are, so they'll give you the street intersection. This is very close to an intersection, and yet this is the exact address of this establishment. So this isn't the people at the corner, this isn't the people in the parking garage. This is exactly this address. So I just want to note that that's not the area.
And you compare that to Olive Zone Oil with 19 calls in the same time period, in the same hours, and Elm City Social, 5 calls in the same time period, in the same hours. So again, it's that accessory use in a similar type of space that is driving these problems. And you're feeling.
I don't know what Ramaj is.
It is a recently closed nightclub that frequently operated as a juice bar.
It's located
next door
on Crown between Temple and College.
What were they formerly?
Mist at one point, Hula Hanks at a different point.
I know where they
I can go back to 20 years ago.
So we have the public safety concerns, but we also have the neighborhood concerns. You're hearing a lot from the nearby residents and business owners in that area about the repeated violence and disorder despite the enforcement we're doing and the warnings. You have the ongoing harm to residents, business, public safety, and the city resources. You have residents moving out, businesses and property owners are struggling. The large night crowds create fights, noise, and intimidation surrounding the club. The trash, the vomit, and the disorder left on the surrounding streets, and nearby buildings and vehicles damaged by gun violence. So the goal here is to limit the use. So we can do zoning to help us do that.
Great. And so one of the two mechanisms, as Becky mentioned, this is the first, is through updating our zoning code to reflect the prohibition or the lack of permission for these in the future, as well as to just add a definition because they weren't in our zoning ordinance in the first place. Juice bars are a very Connecticut-specific type of category of activity that occurs within our alcohol serving establishments, and yet this is an opportunity to make sure we reflect that. So the main changes at a high level are to add that definition into the zoning ordinance for juice bars. It copies pretty closely to what the Connecticut General Statutes definition is that Becky mentioned earlier. And the other change is to put within our use tables the actual land use for juice bars as an accessory use within these alcohol serving establishments. And the result is eventually and effectively to make sure that any proposals to operate an alcohol serving establishment that has a juice bar is prohibited, but it also gives us some teeth when we're doing the review of cafe permit or liquor licenses that come to the city plan department to say, well, first, can you clarify and confirm if you are planning to have both a juice bar space or to have juice bar operations, activities in the future, to be able to add that. The reasoning being that on the actual cafe permit document, it doesn't ask that question. So it gives us more opportunity to put that question in front of our staff as a thing to get further information on, which may take the form of asking for a floor plan, asking for general practice of what they're going to do as their set of events. It also means when it comes time to, if someone does have one of those events and they didn't get permission to do so, they didn't get zoning permission and they just run it, not only can PD go and do what they would be doing anyways, but we can also enforce a zoning violation on top of that in that instance. And so the following pages on your slides kind of get into those two pieces in detail. The first being the actual definition itself, which would be in section 1 of the ordinance if added. And then the second zoning piece being the actual use table. So how it would show up. It would show up within our use table for business and industrial districts. It's in our downtown business districts where we see these uses primarily. It would retain all the regulations that we already have for alcohol serving establishments and restaurants, as is requiring most of them being special exception in most of our districts, but it adds a note that says, if you are not without a juice bar, then your rules stay as normal. If you are proposing a juice bar, that's not permitted at all. For a reminder for you all, if someone is proposing to do something that's not permitted, they're required to seek a use variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. There's an extremely high bar on getting a use variance. You have to prove that no other use that is allowed is possible at that site to be able to get a use variance. So you have to say why only a place with a juice bar.
Downtown location.
Exactly, is the only thing.
No other going to go there.
So the high bar is necessary considering the safety concerns that were illustrated here, and allows for us again to have teeth in a few different directions, even just from a zoning perspective, to further reduce the risk of this. And I guess the last piece that I'll add on is just the timeline, understanding how this process moves this specific to the zoning ordinance. So obviously we're in front of you all. Should you make a decision tonight, this would move forward to your Board of Alder first and second readings, and then move forward ideally by the August period for the mayor's signature for adoption. That is all things moving in kind of as ships move. I'll pass it back, I think.
Yeah, so next steps, this update is important as there are vacant spaces that have been frequently used with business models that rely upon juice bars. So we want to get this in front of you and under consideration for approval, because those next liquor permits that might come in, we can, if they come in after this is adopted, we can use that lens and the prohibition in those reviews. Because the zoning sign-off is one of the required steps for a liquor permit at the state. And again, we mentioned that state enabling legislation that will allow us to update our local ordinances to deal with the current establishments that operate juice bars, which are grandfathered under zoning, because again, zoning regulations are a go forward, not a look back. So we are working on that and we'll be presenting that for communication for the August meeting. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from Committee, Alder Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned industrial districts? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you're tackling juice bars, correct?
No, I can clarify.
Yes.
So the use table within the ordinance, it's the section that covers business and industrial districts that we would be making this change to. So this is largely affecting our downtown area where they're business districts, but this is also inclusive of the fact that there are in occasion, nightclubs or like night activities that are opening within certain industrial areas or proposed, depending on the type of venue. And so this is protective largely of the spaces where that could occur.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, this is just for new.
For new.
businesses. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a new business.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
No. Alder Rodriguez still has the floor.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the change would be the zoning update.
They talked about two things at once.
Correct.
But before us tonight is just for new businesses.
Got it, okay.
Further down the road, they are proposing to introduce something that would deal with.
Thank you,
current
thank you, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, so the state enabling legislation to let us tackle existing businesses takes effect October 1st. We're looking to be prepared for that by getting things in front of you ahead of the October 1st date. Does that make sense?
Repeat that.
So for the current operators,
Mm-hmm.
the state has changed the enabling legislation to give us more tools. We would need to do that through ordinance. We will begin that process end of summer for the October 1st go live at the state. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
It's our expectation that you'll have legislators in that room with you. That
Or
you're
we
creating-
actually have, yes, we do. We have two, and Attorney Murley, who's over here, is.
I mean, alders as legislators.
Yeah, no, we have two alders and an attorney working on that process.
You have one more?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair. I understand you just said you had two alders, but if this is new legislation to pass, I'm thinking about the industrial area in Longworth, and that we've had issues. And so I'm asking, when this passes, then that would include.
So as presented before you, basically what this does is prohibit a cafe license in the future from including a juice bar activity. So unless it exists currently, this update would prohibit any new ones in the future.
Okay.
To the point that you made, to the one that I know you're speaking of, because they currently hold a cafe permit, the ordinance change in the future will apply to them. Does that make sense? Are they still open?
And no, right now,
Okay.
we are not. We dealt with that in area because of the violence that was coming into the street. So I appreciate you guys all saying this is downtown, but that particular bar flows through all the community in that Hills section, and we've had a lot of major incidents. So thank you for that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll let other colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Alder Rodriguez and then Alder Marks.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for this presentation. It's very enlightening. I see that you provided information regarding the police impacts, where you mentioned about assaults, fights, shootings, intoxicated, robberies, liquor violations, disorderly sexual assaults, drunk driving, and then you go on to talk about the impact in reference to the neighbors. And you mentioned about vomiting, individual vomiting, a lot of fights, noise, and all of that. My question is, in terms of the health aspect, have you collected any data of the number of hospitalizations or visits to the hospital related to this crisis and this problem that we have that's impacting our children also? Thank you.
Yes, Alder. When we were working with the project for the monster repairing, we did collect some data for that. and I'm trying to pull the numbers off the top of my head, so I apologize, don't take them for wholehearted facts. I believe it was a short period, it was a increase comparatively of about 20 or so transports, ambulance transports within a time frame for a selected day of the week, increased basically from normal operations within that area to that higher number on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday count. It's very hard without really extracting data to say what exactly was the incident with the patient presenting from that, but we can deduce that it was, ETOH, so intoxication, that it was assault, that it was welfare checks, which for us are like a person down, an unknown medical, somebody driving by, sees somebody on the side of the building, says they're not moving, that type of call. And those were all on high incidence in that area.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And so you're indicating that also not only the police increase, but now we have ambulance and we have emergency rooms being impacted.
Yes, so you're seeing that as well. For every transport that is done, right, the city of New Haven, the provider for the ambulance is American Medical Response. And for every one of those transports, are either transporting to St. Raphael's campus or Yale campus, which on a regular day, near capacity, and we alerts all the time, near their capacity. So yes, in those times of day and days of the week, we are definitely adding to the overall capacity of our two hospital systems within the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you for the presentation. I hear obviously the grave concern and the need for changes. I'm still confused conceptually, sort of back out, sort of trying to work out in my mind how youth get access to alcohol within permanent establishments. I'm thinking, for instance, we have a restaurant, right? And you can get liquor at the table, or you can get it at a bar, right, within the thing. We have bars, right, where people get carded. I guess you gotta be 21 to enter the establishment. Mm-hmm. And now we have this other category, but I'm sort of confused what the current landscape or ecosystem is that this category exists. Can somebody kind of take it back and explain the big picture? Do you understand what
I think
I'm
so.
confused.
So the way that the state allows juice bars to operate is you get kind of two tracks, right? One is you have a separate room, which is basically a very specific separate space that has some level of security, and 21 gets to go into that space, drink, and then not bring the drinks out into general population of the space. That's not what we're talking about here. The alternative that the state allows through the juice bar carve out for cafes is that the 21 and older crowd gets the neon bracelet at the door when they get the card, right? In theory, they're supposed to card, get the bracelet. What Lieutenant McDermott was speaking of is I go in, I have the bracelet, I'm 21, all my friends are 20, they stay on the dance floor, I go up and order 5 drinks instead of my one, and then I have my one and hand them out to everybody else. And what's really challenging is the PD or the oversight, whatever that might be, DCP, walks into these establishments, they don't see an 18-year-old holding a beer bottle, they see an 18-year-old holding a cup of clear liquid that could be, club soda, but in most cases it is not.
Let me ask, this thing called a juice bar that I've never heard of until this agenda item is something that exists in state law?
Correct.
And it's allowed?
It is a carve out so DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, oversees the liquor permitting process. In the liquor permitting process, how many different types of permits are there? About 8?
26.
26.
Okay.
There's
26 for retail establishments where you're supposed to consume on site.
Okay, keep going, I'm interested.
So, for instance, a restaurant, right? If you decide to go to insert restaurant here, where they are serving meals and happen to have a bar, they would fall into a restaurant category. So I could bring my 20-month-old daughter in there, right? Category. In this instance, it's cafes, no food, strictly a bar, nightclub bar. Those who hold a cafe permit are allowed this juice bar accessory use. I wanted to say loophole, but it's really not a loophole. It's specifically in the statutes for them to utilize as a cafe. There's approximately 50 or so cafe permit holders in the city. So there's about 50 of these establishments that operate as cafes. There's a handful of those that operate as juice bars.
I didn't understand that distinction.
Some of them are 21 and older and are strictly 21 and older. So there's an establishment at the corner of, on State Street, there's an establishment that holds a cafe permit license that never allows anyone.
Card at the door.
Card at the door, and anybody who walks through the threshold is 21. That's their business model. And others who say, I have a cafe permit, but Thursdays and Fridays we're gonna let the 18 to 21 crowd.
I'm just, if I may, I'm still lost in a little bit of confusion with this word juice bar, because to me, before I came here tonight, I think I knew there were 2 juice bars. There was that H Cafe on Chapel Street that did smoothies. There's one now in Westville, right?
This is purely, that's a juice store.
So can somebody just can someone talk to me about this, please? I'm
Think
trying
of
to
it
really
in
understand.
the opposite. It is a bar that serves juice as opposed to an establishment that manufactures juice and makes your smoothie.
This is actually a state liquor term.
Juice bar.
And to be honest with you, 3 of us here testified at the state in front of public safety in regards to this. And the vast majority of people that we testified to also shared the exact same sentiment.
And if I may, just the definition you're proposing, we're being clear that it's only an accessory use to an existing establishment like alcohol, such that this definition doesn't apply to the establishment in Westville selling juice.
That's the addition that is not from the state. That is to clarify that it is not a smoothie and fruit juice bar that we are used to seeing otherwise. It's specific to these types of establishments.
Thank you for humoring me with this. This is
I'll be
having
honest.
trouble getting my head around it.
I'll be perfectly honest. We met with DCP and I asked flat out, why juice bar? And what are we solving for by allowing a cafe to allow 18 to 21-year-olds in? And the representation said, that's a great question. We don't have the history in front of us. Right? So.
Thank you, Jordan. Mr. Chair.
All set?
Thank you.
Alder Marshall, and then Alder Theodore, and then we're going
to. So juice bar is a term that comes out of the DCP and the zoning code. If you have a store that sells juice, the zoning code would treat it as a store or as a restaurant, but it wouldn't be called, in the zoning code, there is no such thing as a juice store. That's like a common English description that we might call it, but in the zoning code, that doesn't exist. That's just a store or a restaurant. Or what other category could potentially?
It would be some form of general retail. I believe that's largely what a lot of our stores like that would be.
So juice bar in the zoning code only means this thing you're talking about.
As far as we found,
yes. So my question is, so the numbers that you quoted were 50 cafes in New Haven, or 50 establishments with a cafe license, and a handful also operating juice bars. So a handful to me is like up to 5. Is it 10?
I can tell you that we are aware of 5.
You're aware of 5? Okay.
Actually,
because there's no current process to.
One is now closed, so we're still in that single hand.
Okay. Because you can look up, the state has records about who has a license, a cafe license. And you could potentially, but you could do an inspection of these different establishments, and if on an off day, they might have put all the stuff away, the walls away, and you might even not see a trace of that operation when it's not in effect.
I will happily let Lieutenant Galuza expound upon this, but one of my stories that comes to mind is that Lieutenant Galuza and team went with DCP to one of these locations, am I wrong? Okay, and found a lot of underage people partaking in drinking of alcohol. They left, waited, and on the same night went back to the establishment where they found more people underage drinking alcohol. So they went with the old, they already came, so fire the lights back up.
That's right.
And they called their bluff, and we proved that they were doing exactly what we expected them to do.
I guess the direction of my questioning is more about how would we know exactly how many establishments are doing this unless we have a regulatory scheme in place that tracks it more carefully, which is going to be in the future.
Under current ordinance and state law, they are required to give us advance notice of any nights they're going to be doing a juice bar. We have sent notice, a letter reminding everybody of that requirement, and have been doing spot checks on ones that we have had complaints about, and when we have additional resources that are not dealing with violations at ones we have complaints about other establishments.
All right, so I'm going to change directions real quick because I feel like I'm probably leading us in the direction of discussing the item that's not there before us, which is like the regulations we're going to hopefully enact to deal with the current operations. But on the zoning, I think it's clear to me what you're trying to do, so I don't have any questions about that. But Lieutenant, you mentioned that the high capacity clubs, like their business model is really make money if they're selling lots of alcohol to a lot of people, including younger people. Have we thought about this proposal really deals with juice bars in the future, but have we thought about enacting regulations, zoning or otherwise that deal with high capacity clubs, even if they don't operate juice bars? I mean, are they problems in and of themselves? It just sounds, your description of them, how big they are, how many people can be there, they only sell alcohol. Like, is that a good thing to have in our city?
If you go back far enough, 20 years ago, some of these same buildings and establishments had a thriving business downtown. And there certainly was a requirement, excuse me, there certainly was a requirement for police presence, and there was a police presence. The big difference in the establishments then and the establishments now is a strict 21 and over policy. Generally, whereas people in their early 20s are not known for quiet behavior or the best decisions, the decisions made by 23, 24, 25-year-olds have proved in this scenario to be infinitely better than the decisions made by 17, 18, 19-year-olds. That's where we really started seeing some of the other problems, some of the other reckless behavior, drastic increase in fights, marked increase in property damage, intentional vandalism, things of that nature. So some of these establishments, like we're giving the history of the location of Rumage, it was mess, it was hula hanks, it was various occasions before. We've had incidents with the location at 144 Temple Street. It used to be the Playwright, which was a full restaurant, food serving establishment, very large capacity over there. Never caused anywhere near the problems until they started going down this 18 and over route. Secrets was just recently, what was it, Pacific Standard? It was a 21 and over bar, and we barely had a peep out of them as far as police, fire, medical response. So there are establishments of a decent size that are strict 21 and over that don't have anywhere near the problems. In the similar locations, places like Barcelona, these they're not quite to that capacity, but there's no problems from there. From the Aloe Shop, from Olives and Oil. So there are plenty of places that still, enforce the 21 and over. And that's not where we're getting, the volume of calls that Mr. McCarthy was talking about.
So I think one thing that we're missing that we haven't actually talked about is, there's this thing called a fake ID, right? And it's been around, God, since I've been 18 years old, right? And that was a long time ago. So there's questions that, I mean, like from that aspect of it, and you know, there's always going to be a market for a fake ID, and they're getting very, very, very good, and they're getting almost impossible to distinguish between a real ID and a fake ID because the process now is very, very good. And I'm getting that information from our partners at the Liquor Commission. Because when myself and Lieutenant McDermott, we did the raids the day that the chief was talking about, where we gave him a hiatus and we went back in. And these guys really, they do it for a living. And they were telling me inside Ramage, and they were showing me the similarities, and they're very, very close between a real Connecticut issued ID, driver's license, and a fake. Quite honestly, I would not be able to tell the difference, right? So the big question is, well, hey, don't they scan those IDs at the door? Well, they do, but they don't. So they take a picture of your ID at the door. And Lieutenant McDermott is very well versed on this because he was in that industry for a while prior to his law enforcement career. So they take a picture of the ID just to log it in. And we have that at Ramage too. And the question became, well, somebody gets in there with a fake ID and then they get served. You know, who gets the infraction? Who gets the misdemeanor summons? Does the bartender get it for serving an underage individual? It gets very convoluted and complicated. But the fake ID piece of that puzzle is still there. It's always been my opinion that there shouldn't be any 18 and over clubs. It should all be 21 and over. It was the way it was when we all grew up. Times have changed, I get it, but it's very hard to track and keep track of who's in that establishment. And quite honestly, we went into Ramage. There is no separation, in my opinion, for all intents and purposes. It's a wall that's, what was it, 5-6 feet high, maybe. It separates the bar from the dance floor. You could commingle everybody in that entire building. And who's to say somebody doesn't take a wristband off, give it to somebody else, and then give it back to 21 and over should be the rule. But obviously, we're beyond that point now with current juice bar, cafe licenses. So this legislation here will help us fire EMS and the community actually provide a higher level of public safety. And that's, I guess that's the end result here.
Thank you very much for that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all so much for your hard work on this. And this really, I think it was a three-pronged approach that you took from the beginning here. Legislatively with the remonstrances, which worked out with Ramage, and hopefully we'll get it done for Secrets too, or Gotham rather. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just really grateful for the hard work. My ward, as many of you know, is right in the heart of this. I have 144 Temple, which Lieutenant Galuza mentioned, and all of those other problem establishments face my ward. And so I'll speak more about this during deliberations, but since I started in January, this is consistently the thing I hear from constituents who are not living in dormitories. So all of my constituents in apartment buildings, this makes them want to leave downtown. It is insufferable to wake up in the morning and see throw up on the street. And as someone who grew up in New Haven, went to some of these establishments myself, what you are describing is exactly what is happening, or they'll write an X on your wrist and you rub it off. When I started on the board and learned what the state statute says, I couldn't believe it, because that is not how it plays out in these clubs. It is a free-for-all. These walls do not exist. You can go wherever you want. And yeah, this just has to change. I know I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves because I'm speaking about
in deliberation now.
I'm sorry. Just to say, whatever we can do to prevent more of these, we need to do. Thank you all. Thank you all so much.
I've been a little loose tonight because we've had a lot of comments and not many questions, and we are approaching 9 o'clock. I'm going to end with Alder E. Rodriguez. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Do you want to save our remarks for deliberation?
Okay. My question is, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, have any of the owners of these establishments spoken to you about their concerns in reference to the demand that is going into their businesses that could be affecting that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I can say that I have not spoken to any I have not personally spoken to any business owners. However, I have received correspondence from attorneys who are upset that we are enforcing the current ordinance, which is that they have to notify the police department when they do this type of activity, and if they don't, they receive a fine of how much?
$250.
$250. And so their attorneys have reached out, and as far as our last check, which was a couple of weeks ago, I will not deny, none of them had paid their fines. So that is our only interaction.
That said, not using the public safety lens, but our partners in economic development have tried to have meetings with a number of these proprietors and their landlords, try to encourage them to have better behaviors, and have been canceled on quite frequently, and their offers to meet with them have not been met with positive results.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Out of courtesy, I'll ask if there's any other questions, just out of courtesy. Okay. Thank you. I'm just wondering what the difference is between what you're going to propose in October and what we're doing now, because this is only going to affect new businesses. And it seems that what is coming down in October will be sufficient for all businesses. Is it that we have to do something in zoning first?
So we don't want this type of use. What this does is close the door for future establishments. What we will be proposing in August would be to deal with the existing establishments that are grandfathered to zoning.
I can build on that. I think what you're getting at, Alder, is we don't have to do this first, but this is all we are allowed to do at this point. The state enabling language from this last legislative period goes into effect on October 1st. So we are essentially maxed out on our current ability until the October 1st enabling language goes into effect.
So the concern is that there might be a business that would open between now and October. Yeah.
Correct.
We've worked hard to eliminate some of these bad actors. Yeah. It's much easier to prevent them to come back than it is to get rid of them again once they're back.
But the issue is in October, it will be handled anyway.
It will be approached differently through building on a current city ordinance, if you will, as opposed to addressing through zoning. So it's a multi-pronged approach. There is a current city ordinance related to juice bars. It is very, very limited.
I do agree that zoning and ordinances should go together. I was just trying to understand why we're doing it.
Yeah, so there are a couple of establishments that are currently vacant where somebody could put in a liquor application. They're a long process for a liquor application. We have enough time to update the zoning such that if a new application comes in, when zoning does the review, they can say, in the city of New Haven, this is not a permitted use.
Okay. All right, and then if someone is in violation, as they are now, because there's $250 fines that they're not paying, if someone is serving or then what happens?
So twofold. One, if you violate zoning, it's also a violation of your liquor permit. So that can have enforcement from the state. Two, we can enforce zoning through civil citations and through.
Yes, as you were starting to say, but through the zoning violations that are administered from the building department, as are typically administered if there's a zoning violation that occurs on typical properties today. So they would be getting a cease and desist related to those activities.
Cease and desist through
zoning, through a zoning violation.
Through zoning, through our city. Okay, because we're not going to wait for the state, that's for sure.
We've also pursued remonstrances, as Alder Theodore brought up, which remonstrance would be basically a public petition to the State Liquor Commission to have a review of a liquor permit and the activities in that establishment. That occurred or almost occurred for the establishment mentioned here, Rumage. They settled on several other issues, I think 72 hours before their remonstrance public hearing.
Which takes months. So to get before the Liquor Commission, months for them to give us an answer, months before they take action. I'm just going on the record.
I think there's a member of the public who's familiar with the process.
Okay.
And again, this before you will stop these things before they happen and break the cycle.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to throw some strategic things out there. Any other questions from committee? If not, we thank you very much for the presentation. We do have a couple people that have come to testify on this item.
Vinita Dayal and Bill Roduri. That's what I. That's good.
We'll just have one at a time. You can just have a treat. I know we called your name at the same time. Yeah. Your name and address for the record, please.
Vinita Dayal, and I'm a resident of 85 Church Street, New Haven. Okay. Good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. As I said, my name is Vinita Dayal, and I'm a resident of downtown New Haven. I live in the John Simons building at 85 Church Street. So for years, my neighbors and I have lived with the consequences of the 18 and over juice bar establishments. Like you, I did not know what this term meant, but I've been educated very well in the last few years. So while many people think about what happens inside, and we've heard testimony to that, we also heard about what happens outside and how I am here to sort of give my perspective on what we live through every week. So we've endured late night noise, crowds spilling onto our streets, litter, public urination, fights, vandalism, people lingering outside of homes into the early morning hours, police cars, ambulances, flashing lights. These are just part of our life. It affected our sleep, our sense of security, and our quality of life. Some of my neighbors have moved away because they could no longer tolerate the disruption. Others have stayed because, well, I've stayed because we love New Haven and believe our downtown can be both vibrant and safe. But recently things became really, well, heartbreaking is one word one could use. For 2 consecutive Halloweens, innocent people were shot downtown. Last year, an 18-year-old young woman was killed just steps from our homes. Families watched the aftermath, families with small children, I might add. And someone asked me, why was the child awake at that time? Well, because the child couldn't sleep. The noise is guaranteed to wake up anybody at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, those moments have changed our neighborhood. I know this zoning amendment won't solve every public safety challenge. We've been discussing that already. But zoning exists for exactly this reason, to learn from experience and guide future land uses that are compatible with the surrounding community. This amendment does not close existing businesses or ban restaurants, bars, or nightlife. It simply says that moving forward, New Haven should not continue permitting new alcohol serving establishments to include all ages juice bars that have repeatedly created public safety and quality of life concerns. This vote is especially important today because Rumage that we just heard about has closed and that space is now available for lease. We have an opportunity to make a thoughtful planning decision before another operator recreates the same business model. So downtown is home to thousands of residents, businesses, and visitors. We all deserve a downtown that is lively, welcoming, and safe. We cannot change what's happened, but we can decide what kind of downtown we want for the future. So I respectfully ask you to support the zoning amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony. Sir? Can you give us your name and address for the record?
Hi, Bill Dully, 85 Church Street. I'm impressed the way you guys are digging into these issues. You deserve raises if you have to work this late at night, I'll tell you that much.
We'll put it on the ballot for next.
I will, but I see the mayor on the green, I'm gonna stop him and tell him right here. I'm not gonna rehash what you've already heard about the crimes, the sexual assaults, the murder. It's murder, call it what it is. Anna Acevedo was plowed down in front of my window, and her head was blown off. And I have pictures in my phone of the 8 people that have been shot in 365 days outside of my window. I'm easily accessible. I'll be gladly to send them to you all. And I'd love to sit down and go into detail with what I have on my phone, what I filmed, drug dealing in the parking lots around town, that the 2 lieutenants in the police force shut those parking lots down and calmed the neighborhood down. You know, the public urination, the sexual assaults of young women. I've used numerous intervention techniques, including going down on the street, where employees of some of these establishments attacked me and told me that they were going to beat me up. If Sergeant Fitch wasn't in between me and them, I probably would have gotten hit, but I can still throw a punch. I'm a veteran of the Persian Gulf. I've gone straight to Hormuz twice, and I got recalled for Desert Storm in '91. So these things don't rattle me. And I've stayed in this fight only because of the lack of moral compass that it's showing. People are really, really being hurt. I'm the one that signed the remonstrance for the liquor renewal. And I've led the signing campaign, which we got over 90 signatures for the liquor license to be pulled. So we're working at all levels. And where it's got me to today is that I'm even being harassed legally by their lawyers. I'm spending my own money now to defend myself in something that's happening in my neighborhood that's affecting not only the quality of life, but people are being killed. And here's what I just want to shift real quickly, and I'll end with this. You guys are responsible for the urban planning of the community. And New Haven's a beautiful palette, right? It's the most important city between Boston and New York. It should be the gateway to New England, and you're making it that. And then we have this underpinning of crime on Friday and Saturday night, that when people come down, this is what they see. And the alder there explained it perfectly with the students and what the parents are seeing. And I love your point. I really appreciate the insight that you brought, because this is my point. So when we look at who do we want in New Haven, we want a family of 5 where dad's going to Yale Golf Course and the kids are going to the Peabody Museum and they're going to dinner and they're renting a room, and the economic cycle is feeding wealth generation for the city, non-tax base. And what do we have here? We have one item that's being sold, liquor. It's hitting the P&L of the owners of these companies. They're the ones that are making the money, okay? They're not paying for any of the services that they use after. The county ambassadors that have to clean up in the morning. The ambulances. You hear the police car sirens range on a busy night, maybe 6 times, but on a regular night, 25 times. Pack a bag, come stay in my house on Friday. I will walk you outside from 10 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning, and you will see the mayhem. We videotaped it, we have it on film, but it's costing the city a lot more in their own services. I also want to point out that all these kids are getting behind the wheel intoxicated, and we don't know who's cracking up in Norwich or Greenwich or Shelton. The kids that did the last murder were 16 and 17 years old from Derby. What were they doing in New Haven? What attracted them down here? And then where did they get the automatic weapon? And they opened fire down Center Street in front of my window at a crowd of people and took out 4. So the costs that it's costing us are huge on the outside to, build one person's P&L and one person's bank account. I would just like to say that I think the day's up, for those businesses to be carried on. And I'm going to continue the fight, and I really appreciate you guys working late. I mean, it's almost 9:30. I don't know about you, but it's way past my bedtime, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for all you testified also at the press conference.
I've been in the press conferences. I testified at the State Planning and Protection Committee. I drove up to Hartford. When the first shooting happened in October of 2024, I hunted down all of the TV cameras. I've been on every news channel all over the place. I'm also the guy that did the video in 2025 that I sent to Lieutenant Galuza. I was hanging out my window. We had over 1,500 people on the street. And I said, hey, Lieutenant, it was 9 o'clock at night. I said, Lieutenant, I think we got a problem. I hope nobody gets hurt. And 4 people were shot that night, and Acevedo got killed.
Well, thank you for what you're doing for the city.
Thanks.
We're glad you're on our side.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on any of these 3 items that we've heard this evening? Anyone wishing to testify on any of the 3 items that we've heard this evening? Anyone from the public wishing to testify this evening? Alder Marchand.
Mr. Chair, I move we close the public portion of this meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on closing the public portion of this meeting? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? The public portion is now closed. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Alder Marchand.
I move item 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. On item 1, this is the zoning ordinance text amendment to permit cultural activities not carried on as a gainful business, including art galleries, libraries, and museums, to be designated as of right in the light industrial district. I'm reading the whole thing to give you a chance to think. Alder Marchand.
I'm happy to weigh in on this. So I'm speaking in favor of this item, but I have concerns, and I'm wanting to hear colleagues weigh in on the issue that I'm going to identify in a moment. But generally speaking, the city is a post-industrial city. It would be great if we had a thriving industrial sector in New Haven with the jobs that would produce for people. But we don't, and we're not likely to have that again, at least not at the scale that we did at the heyday of industrial New Haven. And this city and this board has grappled with that issue in a number of ways, including with recent housing developments along Shelton Avenue, with zoning changes elsewhere in the city to try to foster and support other kinds of development that could provide economic benefits and places to live and other benefits for the city. So I think it's appropriate for us to be thinking about what are we doing with these former industrial areas and revisioning what those areas could be and making changes to permit and foster development. And I think cultural institutions like libraries, museums, and galleries can contribute enormously to the life of the community. I live in Westville, and we have a thriving arts scene in that little Westville village that is shared between Ward 25 and 27. We heard one of the leaders of that movement speak with us tonight, and so I've seen firsthand the way that kind of cultural activity can have benefits for the quality of life and for the economics of a business district or of an area. The only concern I have is about whether or not this should be as of right, or whether or not it should be by special permit. It's true that if, and Attorney Cohn in her thorough presentation of information, pointed out the multiplicity of uses currently going on in the current IL districts. But that's not exactly the same list as the uses that are permitted as a right in those districts. They're not the same list. And in fact, some of those current uses in those districts are allowed by special permit. Some of them may be pre-existing nonconformities. I mean, I haven't done an exhaustive analysis of every single listed current use, but it's not necessarily the case that they were all as of right or new. So why am I thinking about this? Because the conditional, I think you have to kind of balance, like, I do understand that if an applicant, someone who wants to open a museum or a gallery or a library, if an applicant has to take the step of going to apply for a special permit, for example, and come to the City Plan Commission, that introduces time, potentially money, because time and sometimes money are the same thing. But if you have to hire an attorney, then there's billable hours, right? Third, it introduces some amount of uncertainty because the commission could vote no, right? So those things make it less attractive and certain for the applicant who wants to do something, somebody who wants to create a new institution or a new develop a property. But on the other hand, what does that process do? It protects the interests of neighbors. It gives them an opportunity to testify, to weigh in on a project oftentimes people who want to develop a property will meet with the neighborhood anyway, and we certainly encourage them to do that. But that's very different from that community having a say at a public hearing where the approval is at stake. That's a very different thing. Also, the special permit process allows for the commission to hear from the public and to consider the context for the application, because no two pieces of city of New Haven that are zoned light industrial are the same. They have different built environments. Some of them are empty and there's a bunch of rubble. Some of them there's a lot of stuff going on. And exactly what's going on there varies from piece of IL to piece of IL to piece of IL. And so if you make it as of right, then you're basically saying, we want it to be possible for someone to establish that use in these areas without zoning approval. They still have to go through site plan approval. They still have to get building permits. I mean, there's other approvals that go along with developing a property or redeveloping an existing property. But the question about whether or not it's going to be allowed, if it's as of right, then that question is already answered, and it's answered up front. And I think given the different states of reality and cleanliness, the different kind of ensembles of uses that you find in these existing patches of IL, to say that it should be as of right means that we're judging that all of them, that these potential uses would be beneficial and really helpful to the community. But if you say that it requires special permit, then you're saying, well, it could be great, but we want to consider the context for each application as it comes forward. And we want to consider that based on an analysis of what's already going on there, based on hearing from residents and stakeholders in the area, and by applying the criteria that are in our zoning ordinance around special permits. And so for me, I think that's the place where I have pause. And special permit is work, but it is a lower threshold. It's a lower burden of proof than a use variance. As our deputy director for zoning said, use variance is a much higher burden of proof for the applicant, right? Whereas a special permit, there are criteria that you have to meet, but it's not, there's no other option for developing this property. You have to prove a hardship. So that's what I'm thinking about, is whether or not, I think we should move forward with allowing this to happen in these areas. The question is, should it be as a right or should it be by special permit? And so that's a question that I wanted to put on the table for your colleagues weigh in on it before I contemplated making a motion Correct. So let's think about that. My inclination, I'm leaning towards special permit rather than as of right. But I want to speak in support of the assertion that these kinds of uses can be really beneficial to these areas and should no longer be not allowed. It's just a question of how could they be approved is what's on my mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Gave us a lot to think about. Further discussion on this item? Alder, I'll just go right down.
Thank you.
So we'll start with Alder Rodriguez, and we'll just go straight down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Alder Marchand, for what you just put forth on the table, because I'm going to agree with what Alder Marchand mentioned. Moving it forward, if we could, as special permits. I do see here, I think there are 12 wards here. I think it's an excellent idea to have these museums and art galleries in wards. And I would say, Mr. Chair, not to labor this, I would join Alderman Shaw in saying I believe it would be best moving forward as a special permits, rather as a right.
If you were to make a motion on that, then that's what you would be inclined to support. There's not a motion just yet, but still a discussion.
Yes, sir.
Alder E. Rodriguez?
I would stand, Mr. Chair, thank you. I would stand in support and approve this amendment in the sense of how it's being presented with special permit.
There's not an amendment just yet.
No, if and when we could consider it, I could. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me. I am enamored with arts and theater and music, and it would be wonderful. I mean, I grew up in the Hill neighborhood, and we used to have theater. I believe it was on Davenport, Sylvan Avenue. You know, we can have these things, bring them into the neighborhood with special permit. I think that would be a great thing. It would definitely add to our culture and diversity in New Haven's cities. Thank you.
Alder Theodore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been feeling really conflicted on this one, but I think what you were describing, Alder Marchand, that there are things, as we saw, that exist in this neighborhood that aren't as of right, and these entities have gone through this community engagement process and this permitting process is compelling to me, and I think that's valuable. And I really believe in art institutions. I think if more had come forward and described that they had wanted to start something in these neighborhoods, but the permitting process or the use variance process was the reason why they couldn't, I think that would have persuaded me. But I still am getting a little caught up when it feels like, obviously this is driven by one entity that is amazing and doing a lot of good for our city. But to me, it doesn't seem like, or at least we didn't hear from a ton of other entities that have struggled with this hurdle. People have overcome this hurdle. They have gotten their special permits. There are a bunch of different arts and cultural institutions, as we saw from that chart, who are in these light industrial zones. And I hope that continues. And yeah, I would be really open to an amendment, but I think I'm also leaning towards having a permit and not as of right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Marks?
Thank you. I just would like to share that I feel uncomfortable with the amendment. We haven't been for any further just because I haven't heard from the presenters on that. So we've had 2 full hearings hearing about this, and I don't know how we reconcile that. Colleague Marchand, you're very familiar with this, and I think understand this at a different level, but I certainly feel that I would like to hear from just so many presenters who spoke about it as of right, what their feeling would be about a big special thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, before we go, I'm in support of this as of right. my reason would be is that this is mostly next to commercial corridors. And we have to do something with these buildings. We have to open this up. We have these buildings that have been sitting for decades. And I think that making it easier for our arts community to do something to renovate, and we have that, well, as was said in Westville, buildings that have been renovated and are serving the community, occupants there. I think this is a win-win for the city. I do understand the neighborhood piece of it, and that kind of makes me go back a little like Jake. We want the neighbors to be involved in decision-making and what comes into the neighborhood. But when you're talking about something that abuts a commercial corridor, this is what city life is. And so we can't treat city life as if we're living in the suburbs. And that's where I think, that's why I would support this as being as of right. And I don't get the feeling that we're going to have 1,000 museums coming into the city. It costs money to renovate these buildings. It costs money to, I mean, I think maybe some will be renting. If there was a concern about coming off the tax roll, I just don't see that happening in great mass. And so my inclination would be to support this as of right. And so I would yield back now. If there's is there further discussion on this? Are we ready to make I mean, we can discuss it. I'm not rushing.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take back what I said previously.
Well, no, you can keep it because we're still in discussion.
Okay,
Yes.
so it would be in commercial corridors. So then
so it abuts.
It
right?
abuts,
So
it abuts commercial
corridors.
And in some cases.
In my ward.
In my
And that's I represent. Right.
And I think in my ward.
I'm speaking in representation of my ward right now.
Understood. Okay.
I'm going to go down. Let me go to Alder Theodore. Are you?
I'm going to leave this where we're at.
Okay.
Well,
Alder
okay.
Theodore.
Thank you.
I guess, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little confused with what the amendment would be. Can I get some clarification? Currently it is special permit or currently it is use variance?
Alder Russian, can you explain that better?
So currently it's not allowed. And so if it's a not allowed use and someone wants to start an establishment in that district with that use, the applicant would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and seek a use variance.
Understood.
Where the standard of proof is a hardship, which is supposed to be a very high standard to meet in order for the BZA to approve that.
Yeah.
Although the BZA does approve those from time to time. So the proposal is to move it from not allowed to allowed as of right. Whereas in all of those light industrial districts that we saw on the maps and our materials, creating a museum or an art gallery or library would be allowed as of right. So there would be no zoning approval needed for that. They'd have to go through site plan and the other kinds of approvals that deal with new construction or redevelopment, but they would need the zoning approval. They would be allowed to do it without any zoning approval from either the Board of Zoning Appeals or the City Planning Commission.
Got it. I guess I kind of like you were touching on other marks. I'm curious to hear if that would be helpful to Wallston, New Haven, or other similar establishments seeking this out, having the special permit instead of the use variance. I'm assuming it would be, but like to what extent?
So we're not going to continue this item. We're going to vote on it with the testimony that we've heard. This is our second meeting on this. And I hear what you're saying, but we need to vote on this. Are you still have the floor, are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Martian?
Mr. Chair, I move to amend this item by making this use allowed by special permit in the light industrial zones.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, discussion, Alder Martian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't repeat everything I said before. I think it's appropriate in these areas that the public be allowed to weigh in, that the City Plan Commission have the opportunity to judge the merits of the application based on the specific context in which it would be situated, that they would apply the criteria that are in our zoning code for special permits. And just so colleagues can understand like what the special permit process is. So if you are owner of a property and you want to develop it, either build a building or convert an existing building into a museum or an art gallery or a library or some other kind of cultural institution, you would have to go to the city plan department and say, this is what I want to do. They would say, well, you need a special permit. So you fill out the application for a special permit. Your application gets put on an agenda for the City Plan Commission meeting. And then which is the third Wednesday of every month except for August. And then you come to that, having filled out your application, paid the few $100 fee for the application, and you lay out what it is that you want to do and why you think it would be good for the neighborhood to do it there. And then special permits are a public hearing before the commission, right? So that means that the commission hears from the applicant, the staff probably have some kind of advice or analysis that they provide to the commission, and then the commission invites the public to come to speak on it. And the meeting's been publicly noticed according to all the laws around how those things are noticed. And then once the public's heard from, the applicant has a right to, of course, rebut whatever the public has asked or questions the public, answer questions from the public. Then the commission deliberates and votes on it based on what the material presented, the testimony given, and based on the standards that apply to special permits. And those criteria include historical significance. Is this project going to diminish property values? What are the traffic and parking impacts? Is it harmonious with the comprehensive plan? I'm not remembering all of them. Access to natural resources. There's certain criteria that you have to consider as a city plan commissioner when you're seeing an application for a special permit. And then it gets voted on. And if it's approved, then the project moves forward as proposed, and it moves on to the next set of things it has to go through with the building department and site plan approval if they're disturbing a lot of stuff on site. But if it gets denied, then they have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a different plan for that property.
Does not go through the board of alders.
No. The special permit are completely a city plan process. And so that's what the special permit process is. I've been on the commission for 14.5 years. I've been part of discussing countless special permits. And I think it's a good process. And I think it really does provide an opportunity for commissioners and the city to consider the specifics of a proposal and the context in which it's going to be situated. So, and for those reasons, I'm recommending the colleagues vote yes on my amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any discussion? Alder Marks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, by way of discussion, I guess I'm interested to think about, I see our city really pivoting, right, away from industrial use. I love the ideas of the cultural equity we're talking about, just sort of the comprehensive plan, how direction we're going. And what we want to do, I think, is incentivize, these are empty buildings in industrial areas where I think it's appropriate, to bring in the use. I guess the question is, we're trying to incentivize people to, say, purchase the buildings. how does special querying, maybe perhaps we'll get some answers and discussion from my colleague with such experience. You know, I'm thinking about buying the building to turn it into, say, a theater, right? But I can't make that purchase because I don't know if the special permit will ever be approved. And I could end up in a situation of a building that I can't really use. So I sort of, am I understanding correctly that special permit means one has to purchase unaware whether they have its use? First, the concept of right of as of right means I get to buy it knowing that I can turn it into my theater. Question for my colleagues, if I'm understanding correctly.
That seems right to me. That's right to you both. If I may, Mr. Chair. I mean, let me just make one comment first. I think some of the things that we do in our city, which is, I often wonder why people purchase buildings and are not sure what they can do with them. And it would seem to make sense if it's possible. And maybe you don't want to spend that money up front, but to kind of figure out what you can do with the building before you buy it, but maybe someone else is looking at it and you want to try to snatch it, or maybe because our process is so long that before, you know, we have to jump through all these hoops to get before a committee, and it's time consuming, that maybe it's difficult to do that. I don't know. I have other comments, but it's not really directly related to your question. So, but I wanted to add that piece, and then I'll give it to Alderman Marchand to more directly answer because you're talking with him.
I think it's fair to say that the site plan the special permit process would introduce an element of uncertainty, and that could affect a property owner's ability to get financing for certain project, depending on the scale of the project. We've certainly heard in this body requests from applicants for us to move as quickly as we can with certain approvals so that they can nail down the financing and move forward with the project. So that is true. That's a factor. I think but I would say that the more important factor is our job is to protect the interests of the entire city and the neighborhood in which a project could be built. And so for me, my experience has not been that the special permit process is unduly long and complicated. It's just not my experience. Doesn't mean that everybody who goes through it likes it. Because of course, if you're moving to close and you want to build something, you want to do it as quickly as possible, and you want the fewest hoops as possible to do that. And I understand that. That's a rational point of view of someone who's bought something or wants to buy something, wants to do something with it. I can understand that. But that's not who we represent in balance. I think in balance, we represent the community and the residents, and that their interest in having a say and their interest in making sure the project is going to be harmoniously and constructively fitting in their neighborhood. I think that's a bigger interest, and that's why we encourage colleagues to support this. One more thing I'll quickly say is that Attorney Cohen did address the issue of special permit, because she mentioned like having it as a right reduces uncertainty and it makes it easier to get financing. So I think we've heard a little bit from that. I'm sure that if she would have more to say, she would mobilize a lot of arguments against it, and her arguments are really good. But I think at the end of the day, it's about balancing the needs and the interests of the different people affected by these projects. And the property owner, of course, is an important person in that mix. But we represent the community, and we want to make sure that these things go well and are kind of fit in with what our overall plans for communities are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Marks, that's the floor.
Thank you. Just, I guess, reflecting on what you're saying, I guess the thing I'm thinking about is we keep talking about the community, and I know some people need to worry about the community, and my word is not one of the impacted words. We don't have any IL there, so I'd like to defer a little bit more to the colleagues who do. I want to acknowledge that. But what I'm thinking is we're not balancing what's happening in a residential neighborhood. Like, we're balancing what's happening in an IL zone with an empty building. You know, it just seems to me that pivoting towards having cultural uses in an IL zone in an empty building seems to be something that would be, I'm having trouble envisioning a lot of opposition from a community to filling a building with a cultural use, given that, of course, there's still permitting and other processes. I'm having trouble envisioning a hypothetical, so I think I'm inclined towards the as of right to include it, but thank you for the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alder Rodriguez, and then we'll go to a second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would stand in support of the item as amended, taking into account it's not about, it's important to note, we have buildings that are empty in the city and that we should consider what's going to happen there. But a cultural entity should consider the community wherein it lies. So it doesn't hurt to do the special permit, giving them the opportunity before even, and suffice to say that anybody that wants to buy in the city should at least explore whether they can or cannot do something in that particular building. We know, and I have personal experience in my ward of a number of individuals who have bought and have not been able to plant their idea or what they wanted to develop. And it's a sad thing because it affects everyone and it's not cost effective. The community wherein this entity will lie will be impacted because, as in the background work for this particular reason that this zoning change wants to be done, it's about a nonprofit buying a building and making it useful for all the wonderful things that it wants to do and opening opportunities. And it's a tremendous thing, but at least if it's with special permit, it gives the opportunity for not only the community to hear, not only the public to have its opportunity to hear, to listen, and to share, but also for the very developers or the persons of interest or the business individuals to protect their interests and be able to say, we got something really good here, a good investment here. Whether it be good or not, whether they receive interchange that's positive or negative, in the end, it's going to be good because that's why we have these commissions and these boards and we have these committees to protect everyone's interest. Not having it with a special permit allows them to be able to just go and do what they want to do without taking into account preliminary and putting at risk their business, their interests, and also exposing themselves to some discomfort within the community where they want to plant what they would like to see happen. That their intent is supposed to be something good for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I thought Alder Marks, your scenario you described was really persuasive, and I just have another question for you, Alder Marchand. Say someone is a prospective buyer or a nonprofit is a prospective buyer for an industrial building. There's no way that they could apply for the special permit before they close the deal on purchasing the property. Or that is not how this normally goes. They're kind of taking a chance buying this property, hoping they get the approved yes.
Briefly,
I'm sorry.
I have to just say, from the perspective as a commissioner, not having bought a property to develop it as a museum myself, but as a commissioner who's been on that bond for a long time, I've heard of various different sequences of events where properties were bought and not acted on for years, and then there was an application to properties there's a tentative deal to buy, but it's not finalized. They're trying to get the zoning approvals to somebody seems really earnest. They want to develop this, they get the zoning approvals, and then they end up not doing it because they sell it to somebody else. So there's lots of different sequences of events that can happen here. So I have heard it happen before that someone had a tentative agreement to buy a property, sought the zoning approval, didn't get it, and then ended up not buying the property. So, but I think it can happen in different ways. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I guess I just kind of wish that we had these questions when we had the percentages before us. Because deliberation, I know we have discussion, but we're asking questions that really should be for the percentages. And I appreciate Alder Marchand and his expertise as serving as a city plan commissioner. And so, but it's not really that I would like to follow. So now I'm just wondering, do you still have questions on this? Because I was hoping that we could deliberate, have a few things answered, but it seems like there's still a lot of questions. All right, you don't get to answer me. Okay, well, we do have a motion on the floor that we need to recognize, and so let me make a statement on that. Based on the first meeting, where there were several that testified passionately in favor of this item, and also those in the community that I represent have called me and asked me to support this. And so, although I do agree with the sense of what Alder Marchand is saying, and it does make sense, at this point, I am not going to be able to support the amendment, but I'm going to go with what my community has asked me to do, and that is to support this as of right. Because that's what I'm elected to do. I'm elected to support the broad voice of my community, and they have spoken and asked me to support this as it is, so that's what I'll do. Is there any further discussion on this item as amended?
Just on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Because we haven't passed it yet. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor of the amendment, let me say what the amendment is, because I think I lost someone here. So the amendment is to not have this designated as of right, but to have it designated by special permit.
To be approved by special permit.
Approved by special permit. Which would include all the processes that Alder Marchand has laid out before us. Does everyone understand?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to do it again. All those that are in favor of this item, or as all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
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 It's 3-3.
Okay.
Okay.
Just fine.
Yeah.
Back to the.
Okay, so now we're back to the item.
I'm sorry, that was 3-4, and we again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Okay, we're back to the item. The amendment failed. Is there further discussion on this item? Alder Theodore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, I think I changed my mind because I've been contextualizing this a lot. No, not about the amendment, like to know on the amendment.
Oh, okay.
I've been contextualizing this in the context of Law City of Avon, who is a very robust operation.
I thought you were going to change your vote.
No. Robust operation, a lot of funding to hire someone like an attorney. And I'm thinking now about that much smaller nonprofit who maybe can't go through that process, does not have the certainty, or like, is purchasing a building without this certainty. And anyways, I am going to support that as of right. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion?
Sorry, I had to step out for a moment, but did anyone make an amendment to include the petition? It was accidentally left out of the original submission.
How should you do that? You did say that. Where's that at?
It is on
There's no amendment to the petition.
No, it's to include the petition. It was not included in the original submission. It's okay. It is,
I move to amend the item by including the petition associated with this item.
Second. Have been moved and seconded. Discussion. Alderman Marchand.
It's important for us to be voting on the complete item, and so let's include it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Any further discussion? All in favor, including the petition, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, the ayes have it. We are now back to the item as amended to include the petition. Further discussion? Okay, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. All those in favor of this item, did you have something?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Of the item as amended, say aye.
Wait.
With the petition
Good,
included.
with the petition included. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Nay.
abst-
It passes.
Oh, wait.
How many?
Petition? Okay. Hold on.
Yeah, we're voting on the complete item.
Thank you.
Okay, so all those that are in favor of this item, say aye.
Aye.
All those that are opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 2. Okay, the item passes. Thank you, alders. I think on item number 2, so just as chair, let me just kind of, my instinct is to pass over this and give the petitioners an opportunity to work whatever they want to work out. The other option is to vote no. I don't know that we can give a leave to withdraw on the ordinance. Alderman Marchand.
Mr. Chair, we could fulfill the request of the applicant, which is to move to continue the public hearing to a future meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, just to pass over and leave it in committee.
Or not take action.
Yeah.
Either will be the same thing.
But I'm just thinking that it's gonna come back dramatically different, which means that we would have to do some work with this, from what I'm hearing from the alders. I think we won't vote on it. I think we'll just pass over it and just leave it in committee. Alderman Marchand?
I move item 3, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Move the second discussion on item 3. Alderman Marchand?
Mr. Chair, I want to speak in favor of item 3. I think we should make this zoning change. I appreciate the efforts of our public safety staff, our chief administrator's office, and our zoning, deputy zoning director. They're doing a great job explaining what the problem is, how this is part of the solution, although the other parts will be coming before us soon. But I think it makes sense to take this action now, and I encourage colleagues to vote yes on this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion, Alderman E. Why don't you please?
Mr. Chair, I too stand in support of this item. I'd just like to surface that I do also understand that there's a tremendous demand in reference to young people and what is happening in the city regarding what they could benefit from. Unfortunately, we have thousands of young people coming into the city and utilizing this source, which is clearly counterproductive if they're utilizing it for recreational purposes. And as a result, it's important that we did have before us this tremendous presentation with data and everything from our city staff and our police, clear and fire, clearly providing to us the true picture of what's happening to thousands of young people coming into New Haven, not only putting themselves at risk, but putting everyone at risk. City, residents and neighbors in the areas where these facilities are that are serving our young people. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all so much for your hard work on this, and I'm really excited to keep working together on the second ordinance.
Mr. Chair, you have to speak to the chair.
I'm really sorry.
If you're talking to the audience, you
Okay, gratitude to everyone who came in today. Yeah, it's really awful what's happening. This is not about ending fun in New Haven, but it's not fun to go out and not know if you're going to come back home safely. And this is a really meaningful step towards ensuring that for future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Marks.
Thank you, Mr. McCarter. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank the administration and public safety, fire department and police department. It's extraordinary. There's a crisis, there's a problem. They've seen it, they've taken action, they've put an immense amount of work, and it's just a real honor to be able to, work collaboratively with them to come up with a solution. So just, it's a proud moment, I think, for us, for me as a legislator, to work collaboratively to address what's really a dire problem. So thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair. I also want to thank the residents of the area because they're experiencing it firsthand. I know that the last gentleman that spoke, he definitely gave testimony at the state level. Many of us were on that call. And I mean, even on that call, he basically said, I invite everybody to come into my home and sit at that window and see what we see. So I think it's impacting the community, and I believe it's also spilling into other neighborhoods once everyone leaves these clubs. It's affecting restaurants. It's affecting our area where we go see the plays as well. Many of us have been caught down there when these events are taking place after we leave the theater. And so I'm happy that people came, and, we need to support this moving forward to assist our police department, fire department, our residents that are experiencing what's happening with these juice bars. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm getting tired.
Further discussion? I'll just say that I also support this ordinance text amendment, but I do want to say this is our fault. This is what happens when we put money over our children. And we allow these businesses, these things that happen in our city, and now we're paying for it and trying to fix it. Because we don't do prevention here, we do maintenance. And this is what's happening with the juice bars. It's going to happen with this cannabis. And this cycle is going to just keep going because we don't think first about the moral fiber of our community. We think about profit. And this is the result of it. And so I'm glad to be part of a board that is providing answers to problems that we created. And so having said that, I'm in support of this, and I'm looking forward to the next piece of legislation that comes down. But to have thousands of young people drunk on our streets, it's a shame to us. It's a shame. And so I want to just really go on the record and say, shame on us, New Haven, for allowing this to go on for so long. With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? The item passes. Alder Marchand?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on adjourning? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
Great meeting, everyone.
Thank you.
That was fun. I'm sorry.
Alder,
Questions?
excuse me, Alder Furlow.
Oh, let's power
Oh,
off.
power.
This is.
You, I don't know how, is it some button down here?
You know better.
No, you're doing it right. Okay, there you go.
No, it's touchy tonight.
We're not.
No,
Power button.